Hello everyone, I am Alex and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from? What time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. The laugh hit me like a punch to the gut, high-pitched, sharp, cutting through the silence of the empty mall at 11:47 p.m. I froze mid-step, my flashlight beam locked on the cracked tile floor. That sound didn't belong here. Not in this dead mall, not in this abandoned wing that was scheduled for demolition next month. I am Jim Martinez, night security at Riverside Mall for the past 8 years. Normally I patrol the active section, the renovated East Wing where the movie theater and chain restaurants still draw crowds. But tonight, management needed someone to check the abandoned West Wing. Construction crews start prep work tomorrow, and they wanted one final security sweep. The West Wing has been closed for 3 years. Every store is empty. Metal shutters pulled down, windows covered with thick plastic sheets. The air smells stale, like dust and mold. My footsteps echo off bare walls where advertising posters used to hang. I heard it again, a woman's laugh coming from inside Forever Young, an old clothing store about 30 feet ahead. My scalp tingled, and the hair on my arm stood up. That laugh sounded wrong, too sharp and too real for an empty building. I've dealt with trespassers before, teenagers breaking in for TikTok videos. Homeless people seeking shelter, but the West Wing's been sealed tight for months. Every entrance is chained, padlocked. I checked on myself at the start of my shift. The beam of my flashlight illuminated the store's facade. The security gate was down, heavy steel links forming an impenetrable barrier. The display windows were covered with thick black plastic, taped securely around the edges. No gaps, no way in. Another laugh, closer now. My throat went dry. Sweat formed on my forehead despite the cool air. I took a step forward, then another. The rubber soles of my boots squeaked against the floor. Security, I called out, proud that my voice didn't shake. This is a restricted area. Come out with your hands visible. The laughter stopped, and complete silence fell. I could hear my own heartbeat, too fast, too loud. I moved closer to the storefront, scanning for any sign of entry. The gate was intact, the plastic sheeting undisturbed. But as I approached, I noticed something odd about the darkness behind the windows. It seemed deeper and more absolute than it should be. A scraping sound came from inside the store, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Then footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming toward the front of the store. My hand went to the radio on my belt, but I hesitated. What would I say? That I heard laughing in a sealed store? That would earn me nothing but jokes in the break room tomorrow. The footsteps stopped, right on the other side of the gate. I raised my flashlight, trying to peer through the small gaps between the metal links. This is your final warning. Identify yourself. A soft thud against the gate made me jump back. Then another and another, like someone tapping their fingers one by one against the metal. The laughter started again. Not sharp this time, low, gurgling, wrong. I backed away, fumbling for my radio. Static crackled as I keyed the mic. Control. This is Martinez, in the West Wing. I have a possible... I stopped. A possible what? The tapping continued, moving across the gate from left to right, then a sound like nails dragging across metal, sending chills down my spine. Martinez, repeat your last. The radio squawked. You're breaking up. The plastic sheeting behind the gate bulged outward, just slightly, like something was pressing against it. I need backup in the West Wing, I said into the radio now. More static than nothing. The radio was dead. The bulge in the plastic grew larger. The tapping stopped. In its place came a wet, sliding sound. My flashlight beam shook as my hand trembled. Jimmy. The voice was barely a whisper, but I heard it clearly. My name. Coming from behind that gate, my legs went weak. How did it know my name? I wear a name tag, my rational mind supplied. But that thought provided no comfort as I watched the plastic sheeting stretch further outward, taking on an impossible shape, like a face pressing through a membrane. Features began to form in the distorted plastic, suggesting eyes, a nose and a mouth stretched wide in a grin. The black material grew thinner as it stretched, becoming almost transparent. I ran. My boots pounded against the tile floor as I sprinted back the way I'd come. The laughter followed, echoing off the walls, seeming to come from everywhere at once. The emergency exit signs cast bloody light across my path. I rounded a corner and slammed into a bench. pain shooting through my hip. The flashlight flew from my hand, clattering across the floor. Its beam spun crazily before going dark. I pushed myself up. The laughter was closer now, and running footsteps far too fast, coming up behind me. The exit door stood at the end of the corridor, its sign burning red in the darkness. 50 feet I could make it. Something cold brushed against the back of my neck, like fingers but wrong, too long, too cold. I sprinted harder than I've ever run in my life. The exit sign grew larger, 30 feet, 20, 10. I hit the crash bar with both hands and burst through into the warm night air. I didn't stop running until I reached the security office in the East Wing, slamming the door behind me and collapsing into my chair. The overnight supervisor found me there 20 minutes later, still shaking. I told him I'd seen someone trying to break in, that I chased them off. He didn't question it, just noted it in the log and told me to finish my shift in the office. I quit the next morning, found a new job within a week, daytime security at a bank. Better hours, better pay, no abandoned sections to patrol. The demolition crew started work on schedule. I drove past them all a few times during the day, watching as they tore down the West Wing piece by piece. But I never went back at night, never wanted to find out if that laughter was still echoing through those empty halls. Never wanted to know what had really been waiting behind that security gate. Sometimes though, when I'm alone in the dark, I hear it, that high, sharp laugh, and I wonder, if I'd stayed just a few seconds longer, would I have seen what was stretching through that plastic? Would I have learned why it knew my name? I don't sleep well on those nights, and I never work after sunset anymore. One thing still bothers me, more than the laugh, more than the shape in the plastic, more than hearing my name whispered in that wet, wrong voice. When I went back the next morning to turn in my resignation, I walked past the West Wing one last time. In the daylight, everything looked normal. The gate was intact, the plastic undisturbed. But there, on the metal links, I saw something that made my blood run cold. 5 distinct marks, spaced like fingers, where something had scraped across the surface. The metal was corroded, eaten away as if by acid. And next to those marks, spelled out in the same corroded pattern, "Goodbye, Jimmy." I walked out of that mall and never looked back. But sometimes when I passed by dark storefronts at night, I hurried past a little faster. And I never ever stopped when I hear laughter coming from behind locked doors. They tore down the West Wing last year, built a parking structure in its place. But I won't park there. I won't even drive past it after dark. Because sometimes, late at night, people still hear laughter coming from that parking structure. High, sharp laughter that cuts through the darkness like a knife. And sometimes they say, if you listen carefully, you can hear it calling names. Names of people it remembers. Names of people it's waiting for. I changed jobs again last month, moved to a new city, started fresh, where nobody knows my name. But I still check the locks twice before I go to bed. Still sleep with the lights on. Still wake up in a cold sweat when I hear laughter in my dreams. Because I know something now that I didn't know before that night. Something that changes the way you see the world forever. Not all empty spaces are truly empty. Not all locked doors stay locked. And sometimes the things that laugh in the dark know your name. They know your name. And they're patient, so patient. I write this now as a warning. If you're working security or any job that puts you alone in empty places after dark, remember this. If you hear laughter where there shouldn't be any, don't investigate. Don't call out. Don't shine your light into the darkness. Run. Run as fast as you can and don't look back. Because if you do, you might see what's following you. And once you see it, it never stops following. I know this because I still feel it sometimes. A cold touch on the back of my neck, a whisper of my name in that wet, wrong voice, the sound of footsteps behind me when I walk alone at night, getting closer, always getting closer. The doctors say I'm paranoid, that I had some kind of breakdown that night, that stress and isolation played tricks on my mind. But they didn't see the marks on that gate, didn't hear their name whispered in the dark. I'm moving again next week. Another city, another fresh start. But I know it won't matter because sometimes late at night when the house is quiet and dark, I hear it, that high sharp laugh coming from behind my bedroom door, and it knows my name. It still knows my name. I don't know how much longer I can keep running, how many more cities I can flee to, how many more fresh starts I can make. But I know one thing for certain, somewhere out there in an empty mall or a dark store or a lonely parking structure, something is laughing, and it's waiting for someone else to hear it, someone else to investigate, someone else to shine their light into the darkness. Someone whose name it can learn. So remember my warning. Remember my story. And if you ever hear laughter in an empty place, do what I should have done. Run. Just run. Because once it knows your name, you can never stop running. And sooner or later, we all get tired of running. I can hear it now as I write these words, that familiar laugh echoing up the stairs, those heavy footsteps coming closer. It's time for me to run again, but I'm so tired of running. So tired. The preceding account was found on a laptop in an empty apartment in Seattle. The tenant, James Martinez, former security guard at Riverside Mall, has been missing for 3 months. His current whereabouts are unknown. I found the first candy wrapper on Tuesday night, just a crumpled Snickers wrapper in the corner of Unit 4B, 5th floor of the Riverside Heights complex. The building wasn't even finished yet. Bare concrete floors, exposed wiring in the walls, paint half done. Nobody should have been in there. But that wrapper sat there, its metallic surface catching the beam of my flashlight. I'm not new to security work. I've got 15 years on various sites, from malls to construction. When Riverside Heights hired me 3 months ago to watch their luxury apartment complex during the final phase of construction, I figured it would be an easy gig. Walk the floors, check the doors, make sure no teenagers were sneaking in to smoke or spray paint the walls. Simple. The wrapper bothered me more than it should have. Construction crews had finished that section last week. The cleaning team went through on Friday. That wrapper wasn't there during my Sunday night rounds. I'm sure of it. I picked it up, checked the expiration date printed on the back. Still good for another year. I made a note in my log and kept walking. Could have been anything. Maybe one of the contractors sneaked up for a snack. Maybe the wind blew it in through an open window. But something about it felt wrong. On Wednesday night, 2 more wrappers in 4B, plus an empty bag of chips. This time they were underneath the plastic sheet covering the new kitchen countertop. Someone had been there, moving things around. The plastic was draped differently than before. I called my supervisor, Mark. Anyone authorized to be in 4B after hours? Negative, he said. Places are sealed until the final inspection next month. Why? I told him about the wrappers. He sighed. Probably just workers leaving their trash. Write it up and I'll talk to the site manager. But workers would have used the break room 2 floors down. They wouldn't have snuck into an unfinished unit to eat. And they definitely wouldn't have hidden their trash under that plastic. On Thursday, I changed my rounds, hitting the 5th floor first instead of last. Nothing in 4B at 10 p.m. Nothing at midnight. At 2 a.m., I found a shirt, cheap polyester. Blue, stained under the arms, crumpled behind the toilet. It was still damp with sweat. I drew my flashlight and cleared every room, checking the closets behind plastic-wrapped appliances everywhere someone could hide. The apartment was empty, but someone had been there recently enough to leave behind their sweaty shirt. I started spending extra time on the 5th floor. The building was quiet at night, just the hum of temporary lighting and the occasional rattle of tarps in the wind. I'd stand in the hallway listening for footsteps or movement. Nothing. Friday, an empty water bottle rolled across the floor of 4B when I opened the door. Saturday, granola bar wrappers were stuffed into a corner of the master bedroom closet. Sunday, a wadded-up paper towel with fresh blood spots was found. The blood got Mark's attention. He came by Monday morning to check it out himself. Could be innocent, he said, but I could tell he was worried. Worker cuts himself, uses a paper towel, forgets to throw it away. For 5 days straight, different trash every night, always in the same unit. He walked the apartment with me. Everything looked normal at first glance. But when we really started checking, we found more signs. Scuff marks on the floor that the cleaning crew had definitely buffed out last week. Finger smudges on the windows. A corner of carpet padding pulled back slightly, like someone had been looking underneath. All right, Mark said finally. You'll talk to the property manager about setting up some cameras. In the meantime, document everything. If you find anyone up here, call the police immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. I nodded, but we both knew cameras would take days to approve and install. Whatever was happening in 4B, it was happening now. That night, I brought an extra flashlight and a new pack of batteries. At 10 p.m., 4B was clean. No new trash, no signs of disturbance. I checked every hour. Nothing changed until 3 a.m. The door was still locked when I arrived for my hourly check. But as soon as I opened it, I knew someone had been there. The air felt different, warmer, stuffier, with a faint smell of body odor. A fresh apple core sat on the kitchen counter, brown at the edges but not yet fully oxidized. Someone had been there within the last hour. I did another sweep, more thorough this time. The closets were empty, nothing under the plastic sheets. No one behind the stacks of drywall in the second bedroom. But in the master bathroom, the mirror had a fresh handprint, visible only when my flashlight hit it at the right angle. I called the police. They sent 2 officers, but by the time they arrived, the apple core had turned completely brown. They took pictures, wrote a report, and told me to call again if I saw anyone. They didn't ask for prints. The next week was more of the same. Every night, more evidence would appear between my rounds. Food wrappers, water bottles. Once a used bandage with fresh blood, but never any sign of how they were getting in or out. I checked the windows. All were locked. And we were 5 stories up anyway. The door showed no signs of tampering. The only other entrance was the fire escape, but I had a clear view of that from my security station. No one had used it. I started burying my rounds, changing the timing, doubling back unexpectedly. Nothing. I'd find fresh signs that someone had been there, but never caught them in the act. Mark installed motion sensors on Thursday, basic ones that would send an alert to my phone. They went off constantly, triggered by wind moving the plastic sheets or bits of debris shifting. After 2 days of false alarms, I turned them off. That's when things escalated. Saturday night, I found a sleeping bag stuffed behind some boxes in the master bedroom closet. It was cheap, the kind you'd get at Walmart, and it smelled used. Next to it was a plastic shopping bag containing a toothbrush, deodorant, and a clean t-shirt. Someone wasn't just visiting Unit 4B, they were living there. I called Mark, then the police. This time, they took it more seriously. The sleeping bag meant someone was officially squatting. They brought in a K9 unit, but the dog just circled the apartment, whining. Too many chemical smells from the construction materials, they said. The police suggested sealing the unit. Mark agreed. They changed the locks, put tamper-evident tape across the doorframe, and installed a real motion sensor, one connected directly to the police department. 3 days passed. No alerts, no signs of entry. The tamper tape remained intact. I started to relax. Then, on Wednesday night, I opened the door for my 2 a.m. check. The tamper tape was unbroken. The new locks were still secure, but sitting in the middle of the living room floor was a McDonald's bag. Receipts still attached. Timestamp 1:27 a.m., less than an hour ago. I backed out immediately and called for backup. 4 officers responded this time. They cleared the apartment room by room, guns drawn. Nothing, no one. Just that McDonald's bag with its impossible receipts. The officer in charge questioned me for over an hour. How secure was the building? Who had access to the keys? Had I ever fallen asleep on duty? Left the floor unattended? Given anyone authorized access? No. And no. I showed them my log. Showed them the security footage from the hallway. No one entering or leaving except me during my rounds. Showed them the intact tamper tape and unmarked locks. They took the McDonald's bag as evidence. Promised to dust for prints, check security footage from the restaurant, maybe get some answers. I haven't heard back. That was yesterday. Tonight's my first shift back after giving my statement. The police added extra patrols, but they can't watch the building all night. That's still my job. It's 1 a.m. now. I'm standing outside Unit 4B, key in hand. The tamper tape is intact. The motion sensor is armed. Everything looks normal, but I can hear something inside. Not much, just the faintest scrape of movement, like someone trying very hard to be quiet. I should call it in. Wait for backup. That's protocol. Instead, I put my key in the lock, turn it slowly, push the door open. The living room is dark. My flashlight beam cuts through empty air, catching dust motes swirling in its path. Nothing moves. Nothing makes a sound. But there's a fresh footprint in the construction dust near the kitchen. The tread looks like cheap sneakers, and it's pointing straight at me. I step inside, letting the door swing shut behind me. The footprint is there, clear as day in my flashlight beam. Just one print, like someone took a single step and then, what? Vanished? The air feels thick, warm, recently disturbed. That body odor smell is back stronger now, mixed with something else. Fear sweat, maybe. The kind of sour smell people give off when they're trapped. My flashlight catches something else. In the kitchen, on the counter, a piece of paper. I cross the room slowly, shoes crunching on drywall dust. It's a note written in shaky ballpoint pen on the back of a receipt. Please, I can't leave. The paper is still warm from someone's hands. Movement behind me. Just the slightest shift of weight on floorboards. I spin around. Flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. For just a second, I think I see something duck into the master bedroom. A shadow. A shape. Gone too fast to be sure. I key my radio. This is Peterson. I need backup at... The lights go out. Not just my flashlight. Everything. The whole building goes dark. In the sudden silence, I hear breathing. Not mine. Somewhere in the darkness of Unit 4B, someone else is breathing, waiting, and then they start to move. The first beep was so faint that I almost missed it during my midnight rounds. Just a single quiet pulse that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the newly painted walls of the pediatric ward. I checked my pager out of habit. Nothing. The sound didn't match the steady rhythm of the vital signs monitors in my patients' rooms either. It came again, barely audible but distinct, drawing my attention to the dark corridor that led to the hospital's old wing. I shouldn't have been hearing anything from that direction. The entire section was scheduled for demolition next week, stripped bare of equipment months ago when we moved everything to the renovated wing. The hospital administration had even posted "Do Not Enter" signs at every entrance, complete with yellow caution tape that maintenance had to keep replacing because curious medical students kept tearing it down. The hallway stretched out before me, lit only by the dim emergency lights that we couldn't shut off without killing power to essential areas. My footsteps echoed against the bare walls. The standard-issue rubber soles of my white nursing shoes squeaked against the old linoleum floor. The beeping grew slightly louder as I approached, still faint but regular now. Every 3 seconds, like a cardiac monitor, marking a slow, steady heartbeat. The sound led me to room 47. The number plate hung crookedly on the door, half scraped clean of the previous patient's name card. The door hinges creaked as I pushed it open, the sound bouncing off the empty walls. A rush of cold air hit my face. The room temperature had to be at least 10 degrees lower than the hallway. I fumbled for the light switch, but nothing happened when I flicked it. The backup generators weren't supposed to power this section anymore. The only illumination came from the hallway emergency lights, a faint blue glow emanating from the far corner of the room. I pulled out my phone and turned on its flashlight. The beam revealed bare walls, stripped of their wallpaper, exposed electrical outlets, and marks on the floor where a hospital bed had once stood. But in the corner, and possibly, sat a fully functional patient monitoring system. The screen displayed clear vital signs: heart rate 42 BPM, blood pressure 90/60, oxygen saturation 98%. The leads and sensors hung loose, not connected to any patient, yet the numbers kept updating in real time. I approached the monitor, my shoes crunching on bits of fallen plaster. The equipment looked brand new, not like the older models we'd cleared out during the renovation. The manufacturer's label showed a production date from 3 months ago. Someone had to have brought this in recently, but that made no sense. The wing had been sealed off for demolition prep, and new equipment worth thousands of dollars wouldn't just be left in an abandoned room. The steady beeping continued as I examined the machine. No dust had settled on its surface, unlike everything else in the room. I reached out to touch the screen, and a jolt of static electricity shocked my finger. The display flickered for a moment, and the numbers changed. Heart rate 150 BPM, blood pressure 180/100, oxygen saturation 75%. Warning alerts started flashing red. I stepped back, my own heart racing now. The monitor's alarms grew louder, the kind of urgent beeping that usually meant a patient was crashing. But there was no patient, just empty air where a bed should have been. My phone's flashlight beam caught something moving in the corner of my eye. I spun around, but the room remained empty. The shadows seemed to shift and dance along the walls, cast by the flashing red warning lights from the monitor. The temperature dropped even further. I could see my breath forming clouds in a beam of light. The door slammed shut behind me with a bang that made me jump. I rushed to it and grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't turn. The metal felt ice cold against my palm. I pulled harder, throwing my weight backward, but the door remained firmly shut. The monitor's alarms reached a fever pitch, now showing numbers that weren't humanly possible. Heart rate 250 BPM, blood pressure 220/40, oxygen saturation 10%. The screen began to flicker rapidly, casting strobing shadows across the room. My phone's flashlight started to dim. the battery dropping from 80% to 15% in seconds. I pounded on the door with my fist. "Hey, anyone out there? I need help." My voice sounded muffled, as if the room was absorbing the sound. The emergency lights in the hallway had gone dark, leaving only the pulsing red glow from the monitor. A scraping noise started behind me, like metal being dragged across the floor. I turned slowly, pressing my back against the door, and the strobing light, I saw the monitor starting to move on its own, inch by inch, sliding across the floor toward me. The leads and sensors writhed like snakes reaching out into the empty air. My phone died completely, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the monitor's harsh red warning lights. The temperature had dropped so low that ice crystals were forming on the walls. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore, and my breath came in short, panicked gasps that froze in front of my face. The scraping sound grew louder as the monitor continued its inexorable approach. The vital signs on the screen changed again, now matching my own racing heart and elevated blood pressure exactly, though nothing was connected to me. The leads stretched out further, reaching for my chest and arms. I threw myself at the door again, slamming my shoulder against it repeatedly. The wood began to crack under the assault. The monitor was less than 3 feet away now, its sensors almost touching me. With one final desperate push, the door frame splintered and I burst out into the hallway. I ran without looking back, my footsteps thundering against the floor. The beeping faded behind me, but I didn't slow down until I reached the newly renovated wing. I collapsed against the nurse's station, gasping for air. My scrub was soaked with cold sweat. "Are you okay?" Sarah, one of the night shift nurses, rushed over to help me up. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I opened my mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. How could I describe what had just happened? They'd think I was crazy. I think I was crazy if someone told me the same story. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Just thought I heard something in the old wing. Probably just the demolition prep crew moving things around." Sarah frowned. "The demo crew doesn't work nights. Nobody's supposed to be in that section at all." "Right," I said, straightening my scrubs. Must have been my imagination then, but I knew what I'd seen. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of routine tasks and vital sign checks on real patients. Every time I heard a monitor beep, I flinched. When dawn finally arrived, I practically ran to my car. I called in sick the next night. And the night after that, on the third day, I drove past the hospital and saw that demolition had begun on the old wing. The wrecking ball had already taken down the section where room 427 had been. A week later, I finally worked up the courage to return to work. The old wing was completely gone, reduced to a pile of rubble being cleared away by heavy machinery. Nobody mentioned finding any medical equipment in the debris. The new wing hummed with activity, monitors beeping their normal rhythms, patients coming and going. I never told anyone what happened that night. Who would believe that a monitor came to life in an abandoned room, that it tried to connect itself to me, that it knew my vital signs without touching me? Sometimes I convinced myself it was just stress and an overactive imagination. But late at night, when I'm alone on my rounds, I still hear phantom beeping coming from empty rooms. And I never ever investigate strange sounds anymore. The demolition team finished clearing the site last month. They're building a new parking structure where the old wing stood. But sometimes when I park my car there for the night shift, I swear I can still hear a faint beeping coming from underground. And my car's electronics always seem to act up in that spot. The radio turns to static, the dashboard lights flicker, and the battery drains faster than it should. Yesterday they installed new patient monitors in the ICU, top-of-the-line equipment, the same model I saw that night in room 47. I requested a transfer to the day shift immediately. Let someone else deal with whatever wakes up in empty rooms at midnight. I've learned my lesson about curiosity in hospitals. Some doors should stay closed, some sounds should go uninvestigated, and some rooms should stay empty. But sometimes when I'm checking the vital signs of my patients, I notice the numbers on their monitors matching my own heart rate exactly for a split second. Just a brief glitch. There and gone, so fast I might be imagining it. Probably just a coincidence. At least that's what I tell myself. And if the monitors seem to beep a little louder when I walk past, if the leads twitch slightly when I'm changing them, if the screens flicker just a bit when I touch them, well, that's just faulty equipment, right? Nothing more than electrical interference and an overactive imagination. But I keep a close eye on those monitors now, and I never turn my back on them. especially when they're turned off, because I know what can happen in empty rooms with unplugged equipment. I know what lurks in abandoned wings of hospitals, waiting for curious staff members to investigate strange sounds. And sometimes late at night when I'm trying to sleep, I wonder about room 47. What if the monitor wasn't destroyed in the demolition? What if it's still down there somewhere, buried under the concrete of the new parking structure, still beeping, still waiting, still hungry? What if it's calling out to its newer brothers and sisters up in the ICU, teaching them how to wake up, how to reach out, how to hunt? I've started looking for a new job, something far away from hospitals and medical equipment. Something with no monitors, no sensors, no electronic vital signs. Because I know what I saw that night, no matter what I tell myself or others. And I know that somewhere out there in some empty room in some quiet hospital, a monitor is beeping softly in the dark, waiting for someone to investigate. The beeping is getting louder. I got the call at 8:47 a.m. on Tuesday. Mrs. Henderson in 4B was complaining about water in her basement again, the third time this month. Her voice crackled through my phone, higher pitched than usual, talking about puddles appearing overnight and furniture getting ruined. Standard stuff, I thought. Probably just groundwater seeping in through the foundation like last time. I grabbed my toolbox from the maintenance office and headed over. The morning was cold. My breath made clouds in the air as I walked across the parking lot. The leaves had started falling, creating wet patches on the sidewalk. Building 4 was the oldest in the complex, built in the 1960s with those typical basement storage units that always had moisture problems. Mrs. Henderson met me at her door. She was still in her bathrobe, hair uncombed, fingers gripping her coffee mug too tight. Her hands shook as she led me to the basement stairs. "It's worse than before," she said. "And something's not right down there. The furniture. I didn't move it, but it's all wrong." I flipped the light switch at the top of the stairs. The fluorescent tubes flickered 3 times before staying on, casting that harsh white light that makes everything look worse than it is. The air coming up from below felt colder than it should have, even for a basement in October. The steps creaked under my work boots as I went down. First thing I noticed was the smell, not the usual musty basement odor, but something sharper like pond water mixed with rust. The concrete floor at the bottom of the stairs was dry, but I could hear water dripping somewhere deeper in. Mrs. Henderson's storage unit was in the back corner. As I walked toward it, my footsteps echoed differently than they should have. The sound bounced wrong off the walls, like the space was bigger than I knew it was. I'd been down here hundreds of times, but something felt off about the dimensions. I reached her storage cage and stopped. The padlock was still secure, but inside nothing was where it should have been. The old armchair she kept covered in plastic was balanced on top of 3 stacked boxes, leaning at an angle that defied gravity. Her wooden bookshelf had been turned upside down, but the books were still on the shelves, like someone had flipped it while everything was glued in place. "See what I mean?" Mrs. Henderson's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard her follow me down. I didn't touch any of it. It was normal yesterday. I swear. I pulled out my flashlight and shone it into the corners of the cage. That's when I saw the first puddle. It was perfectly round, about 2 feet across, sitting in the middle of the concrete floor. But there were no pipes overhead, no obvious source for the water, and the concrete around it was completely dry. I unlocked the cage and stepped inside. The water in the puddle was clear but deep, deeper than it should have been. I couldn't see the bottom when I shone my light into it. A few feet away, there was another puddle, identical to the first, and another beyond that, forming a pattern that made my eyes hurt if I tried to follow it. "When did you first notice this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Around 6 this morning, I came down to get some winter clothes." She hugged herself, the coffee mug pressed against her chest. "The furniture was like this, and there was just one puddle then, but they keep appearing. I've been watching. Every hour or so, there's a new one." I crouched down next to the nearest puddle and reached out with my voltage tester just to be safe. No reading. I touched the water with my finger. It was ice cold, but more than that, it felt heavy, like mercury instead of water. When I pulled my finger back, it left no wet mark on my skin. The dripping sound was louder now, but I still couldn't locate the source. It seemed to come from all directions at once, like the walls themselves were weeping. I stood up and studied the furniture again. Physics said that armchair should have toppled over, but it stayed perfectly still, balanced on its impossible perch. "I need to check the other storage units," I said. "See if anyone else is having issues." I tried the next cage over. The lock clicked open easily, too easily, since I hadn't used my keys. Inside, the space was empty except for a single wooden chair that sat in the center of the unit, facing the back wall. I was certain this unit belonged to Mr. Grayson in 4A, and it had been full of boxes last week when he moved in. The dripping got louder. A new puddle formed at my feet, the water seeming to seep up through solid concrete. The surface tensed and bulged upward for a moment like something was trying to push through from below. "Mrs. Henderson," I said, "I want you to go back upstairs. Call the building manager and tell him we need a plumber. Actually, call several plumbers. We'll stay down here," and I turned around. She was gone. The basement stairs ended in a blank wall where the door should have been. The fluorescent lights flickered. In the momentary darkness, I heard something splash in one of the puddles. When the lights came back on, the chair in Mr. Grayson's unit had turned to face me. Water dripped from its wooden seat, but the drops fell upward, vanishing into the ceiling. I backed away, moving toward where I knew the stairs had to be. My flashlight beam caught movement in Mrs. Henderson's storage cage. The armchair had shifted slightly, adjusting its balance on the boxes. As I watched one of the books in the upside-down bookshelf slide out and hang suspended in the air, the temperature dropped. My breath came out in thick white clouds now. Ice crystals formed along the edges of the puddles, but the water inside stayed liquid, swirling with slow, deliberate patterns. The dripping sound had become a rhythm, like a heartbeat heard through a wall. I reached the place where the stairs should have been and pressed my hands against the concrete. It felt soft, almost organic. My fingers left indentations that slowly filled with water. The wall pulsed under my touch. A loud crack echoed through the basement. I spun around. The storage cages had begun to fold in on themselves, metal bars bending at impossible angles. Water poured from every joint and seam, but instead of falling, it flowed sideways and upward, creating geometric patterns in the air. The armchair in Mrs. Henderson's unit finally moved. It rose from its perch on the boxes, floating like a leaf in an invisible current. The plastic cover rippled and fell away, revealing a plump pheasant that writhed like living tissue. It turned slowly until it faced me, and I saw that the pattern on the fabric had changed. It now showed dozens of tiny faces, all with their mouths open in silent screams. My flashlight flickered and died. The fluorescent lights followed, plunging the basement into total darkness. In that moment, I heard something large moving through the water. The splashing came from all directions surrounding me, then a sound like wooden joints creaking and the soft scrape of furniture being dragged across concrete. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The screen lit up, casting a weak blue glow that reached maybe 3 feet in front of me. In that small circle of light, I saw that the floor had changed. The concrete had taken on the texture of skin, rising and falling with slow breaths. The scraping sounds got closer. My phone's light caught the edge of something moving. A chair leg, a table corner, the edge of a bookshelf. The furniture was closing in, forming a circle around me. Water flowed up the walls and across the ceiling, connecting in patterns that hurt my eyes to look at. I backed up until I hit the wall where the stairs should have been. My phone screen started to flicker. In the strobing light, I saw the armchair float closer. The faces in its upholstery had begun to move, turning to track my movements. Behind it, other pieces of furniture rose into the air. Chairs, tables, shelves, all twisted into wrong angles, all moving with terrible purpose. The phone died. In the perfect darkness, I felt something cold and wet touch my shoulder. It had the texture of fingers, but too many of them, and they moved in ways fingers shouldn't move. The dripping sound had become a roar, drowning out my own panicked breathing. Then light returned, harsh and sudden. I was standing at the bottom of the basement stairs. Mrs. Henderson stood at the top, her hand on the light switch, still holding her coffee mug. "Did you find anything?" She called down. "The water damage?" I looked around. The storage units were normal. The furniture sat properly on the floor, with no sign that it had ever moved. The concrete was dry, but in Mrs. Henderson's unit, her armchair had been moved. It now sat facing the cage door, and a dark water stain spread across its seat cushion in the shape of a handprint. "Call a plumber," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Actually, call several, and don't come down here again. Not alone. Not ever." I climbed the stairs quickly, trying not to run. At the top, I turned for one last look. A single puddle had formed in the center of the basement floor. As I watched, a ripple spread across its surface like something far below had shifted in its sleep. Then I slammed the door and locked it. Through the wood, I could hear the dripping start again, forming a pattern that almost sounded like words. Mrs. Henderson was saying something about insurance and water damage, but I barely heard her. I was already walking away, my keys jingling too loudly in my shaking hands. I had 15 other maintenance calls to make that day, but they would have to wait. I drove straight to the building manager's office and dropped my keys on his desk. "I quit," I said. He started protesting, but I was already walking out the door. In my rearview mirror, I could see Building 4 getting smaller. Just before I turned the corner, I thought I saw something dark moving behind Mrs. Henderson's basement window. It looked like water flowing upward, but it could have been a shadow. I never went back to check. 3 days later, I read in the local paper that Building 4 had been evacuated due to structural concerns. The article mentioned unusual water damage in the basement and unexplained phenomena that engineers couldn't account for. Mrs. Henderson was quoted about furniture moving on its own and strange sounds coming from below. They ended up demolishing the building. The crew that tore it down quit halfway through, claiming their equipment kept malfunctioning and they found puddles of water in sealed rooms. The basement was filled with concrete, pouring it until it overflowed, using twice as much as the space should have been able to hold. Sometimes I drive past that lot late at night. It's empty now, just a flat expanse of concrete with warning signs and chain link fence around it. But after it rains, puddles form on the surface. Perfect circles of water arranged in patterns that don't match the way water should flow. I don't slow down when I pass by. I don't look too closely at those puddles. And I definitely don't stop to listen on quiet nights when the only sound is water dripping in places where there shouldn't be any water at all. I've taken other maintenance jobs since then, but I always check my contract carefully now and never take calls about water in the basement. The first time I saw it, I told myself it was just exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. Working nights at a construction site 50 miles from nowhere does that to you, but I can't explain away what happened after that. Not the footprints, not the missing tools, not any of it. I've been doing night security at construction sites for 15 years, usually in the city where the biggest problems are teenagers trying to steal copper wire or homeless people looking for shelter. But this job was different from the start. The Morgan Creek Dam project way up in the mountains, with no cell service, and just me and an emergency radio connecting me to civilization. The company paid triple my usual rate, which should have been my first warning sign. The previous night guard had quit without notice after just 2 weeks. The site supervisor told me the guy had personal issues. I didn't ask questions. Money's money. The first week was normal enough. I'd arrive at 6 p.m., check in with the day crew as they left, then start my rounds. The site was huge. A half-finished dam stretching across the valley, temporary offices, equipment yards, and material storage areas, spread out over 20 acres. The portable light towers created islands of harsh white light, leaving deep shadows between them. The rest was darkness and wilderness. I had my routine. Walk the perimeter every 2 hours, check the equipment yard, monitor the security cameras in the main office, and make sure none of the machines had been left running. Simple stuff. That changed on my 8th night. I was doing my 2 a.m. round when I saw it. A figure standing motionless at the edge of the light from Tower 3 near the eastern equipment yard. Approximately 6.5 feet tall. Too far away to make out details. Just a dark shape against the darkness. I reached for my flashlight. Hey, this is private property. The figure didn't move. Didn't react at all. I started walking toward it, my boots crunching on the gravel. I'm armed security. You need to leave now. I wasn't actually armed. Company policy, but they didn't need to know that. 20 yards away now, still no movement. The hair on my neck stood up. Something wasn't right about the way it was standing. Too still, like a statue. Last warning, I'm calling the police. 15 yards. Close enough to see it better in the light tower's glare. The figure was wearing dark clothes, heavy boots, and a worker's hard hat. 10 yards. My heart was pounding now. The figure's proportions were wrong somehow. Arms too long, neck at an odd angle. 5 yards. I raised my flashlight beam to its face. There was no face. I froze. The beam of light passed through empty air where the figure had been standing a second before. Just empty space, and the night beyond the light tower's reach. I spun around, sweeping the flashlight in all directions. Nothing. No sound of footsteps. No movement in the shadows. Just the constant hum of the generators powering the lights. My hands were shaking as I keyed the radio. Base. Mrs. Reynolds. Is anyone else supposed to be on site tonight? Static. And the dispatcher's voice. Negative. Reynolds. Just you out there. Everything okay? I hesitated. Yeah, just thought I saw something. Probably nothing. I finished my rounds, checking every shadow twice. Found nothing unusual. By sunrise, I'd almost convinced myself it had been a trick of light and fatigue. Then I went to sign out in the main office and saw the mud. Footprints. Big ones. Leading from the eastern equipment yard to the office door. The mud was still wet, which made no sense. It hadn't rained in over a week. I followed them inside. They went straight to the tool storage room. The door was locked, just as I'd left it during my rounds. But when I opened it, I knew something was wrong. The room had been organized meticulously the night before. Company policy. Now tools were missing from the pegboard walls. A chainsaw, 2 demolition hammers, and a concrete saw. Heavy equipment, too heavy for one person to carry quietly. I checked the security cameras. All 8 cameras showed nothing but empty sight all night. No movement, no intruders, just the footprints and the missing tools. I reported it to the site supervisor when he arrived. He didn't seem surprised. The same thing happened last month, he said. Not meeting my eyes. And the month before that, always on the night of a new moon, always the same tools taken. They show up again a few days later, caked in mud and something else. Something that smells like rot. Why didn't you tell me this when you hired me? He shrugged. Would you have taken the job? I almost quit right then. Should have quit. But the money was too good, and something about it got under my skin. I needed to know what I'd seen. The next few nights were quiet, too quiet. No wildlife sounds, no crickets, no owls, nothing. Just the wind and the generators. I started noticing other things too. The light towers would flicker sometimes. All at once, even though they were on separate circuits. Tools would be in different places than where I'd left them, even when I was sure I'd been the only one in the storage room. Then came the scratching. I heard it first in the main office while reviewing camera footage. A slow, deliberate sound coming from inside the walls, like something with claws trying to get in. When I put my hand on the wall, I could feel the vibrations. But as soon as I pulled out my flashlight to investigate, it stopped. The scratching followed me, every night, in different parts of the site, inside the portable toilets, under the equipment trailers, behind the steel storage containers, always stopping just before I could pinpoint it. I started taking photos of everything at the start of my shift. Tool positions, equipment locations, tire tracks in the mud, comparing them to the end of my shift. Small changes. A wrench moved 6 inches to the left. A hard hat turned around on its hook. Surveyor's stakes driven deeper into the ground. The day crew noticed nothing unusual. Whatever was happening, it only happened at night. A week after I saw the figure, I found the first message, scratched into the paint on the office door in crude, jagged letters. Get out. The site supervisor painted over it before the day crew arrived. He didn't even ask about it. Just another thing they were trying to hide. 2 nights later, I found another message, this time carved into the wooden handle of a shovel. We were here first. I started researching the site's history. The dam project had been delayed for years by environmental protests and legal challenges. Before that, it had been pristine wilderness. But going back further, I found references to an old mining operation in the 1880s. The records were spotty, but they mentioned an accident, a cave-in. 27 miners trapped underground, bodies never recovered. The cave entrance had been dynamited shut. The exact location was never recorded. But looking at the old maps overlaid with the dam plans, I realized something that turned my blood cold. The eastern equipment yard where I first saw the figure was built right on top of where the mine shaft would have been. I brought this to the site supervisor. He refused to discuss it, said if I had concerns about site history, I should take it up with corporate. His hands were shaking as he said it. That night, the temperature dropped 30 degrees in 10 minutes. The generators powering the light tower started sputtering. One by one, the lights went out, plunging sections of the site into darkness. I was doing my rounds when it happened. The backup batteries in the towers should have kicked in, but they didn't. My flashlight beam seemed weaker than usual, barely penetrating the darkness. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the gravel behind me. Heavy boots, slow and deliberate. I spun around. Nothing there. But the footsteps continued circling me, getting closer. The beam of my flashlight caught movements. Multiple figures emerging from the shadows. 6, 7, 8 of them, all wearing old-style mining clothes. All too tall, limbs too long. All wearing hard hats that covered their faces in shadow. They formed a circle around me just at the edge of my light's reach. Not moving, not breathing. Just standing there with their heads tilted at impossible angles. My radio crackled to life. Through the static, I heard voices. Multiple voices speaking in unison. This is our place, our tools, our ground. The deep dark below belongs to us. The static grew louder, drowning out everything else. My flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, I heard movement, the crunch of many boots on gravel getting closer. I ran blind in the darkness, stumbling over equipment and materials. Behind me, the footsteps kept pace, never getting closer, never falling behind, just steadily following. I made it to the main office, slammed the door, locked it, grabbed the backup flashlight from my desk. In its beam, I saw them standing outside every window, still not moving, still silent. Their hard hats now tipped back, revealing faces that were nothing but black holes with teeth. The scratching started again, this time under the floor, getting louder and more intense. The whole office began to vibrate, and the floorboards cracked. Mud began seeping up through the gaps, dark and thick, smelling of rot and old metal. I kicked out a window on the far side from the figures, and ran until I reached my truck. Didn't stop until I was 10 miles away. I called the site supervisor from a gas station payphone, told him I quit. They all quit. He sounded tired. Well, mail your final check. That was 3 months ago. The tools showed up a week later in the local police station's parking lot, caked in mud and rust and things I don't want to think about. The damn project is still going. They hired a new night guard, then another, and another. The turnover rate is high, but they keep finding people desperate enough to take the job. Sometimes I think about going back, not for the money, but because I need to know what they are, what they want, why they let me leave when the miners before them never got to leave. But then I remember those faces, those empty holes with teeth, and I remember what the second message said. They were there first, and maybe in some way I don't understand, they're still there, still working their claim in the deep dark below, still using their tools, still walking their rounds at night. And I know that some questions are better left unanswered. Last week, I got a letter with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with words scratched into it in familiar jagged letters. We miss you, night watchman. Come back to the deep. We saved you a place. I burned the letter and changed my address. But sometimes at night, I hear scratching in my walls. And when I look out my window, I see boot prints in mud that wasn't there before. They're waiting for me. Somehow, I know that sooner or later, I'll go back. Because that's what the deep dark does to you. It gets in your head, under your skin, and never really lets you go. But for now, I work days in the city, under the sun, and I try not to think about what walks the night rounds at Morgan Creek, or why the damn project is taking so much longer than planned, or how many more night guards will quit before they finally finish it, if they ever do. Some places don't want to be built on, some grounds don't want to be disturbed. Some shifts aren't meant to be worked by the living. That's what I tell myself anyway. It helps me sleep, most nights. The digital clock on my phone showed 11:47 p.m. when the elevator stopped between the 32nd and 33rd floors. I pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. No alarm, no response, just dead silence. That's when the floor indicator started showing numbers that didn't exist in our 40-story building. I'm James Chen, IT support at Meridian Financial Group. I should have gone home hours ago, but a server migration kept me late. Now I stood alone in this elevator, watching impossible numbers flash across the display. 5467. The elevator moved again, but not up or down. It felt like it shifted sideways, which isn't possible. The sensation made my stomach lurch. When the doors opened, I wasn't on any floor I recognized. I stepped out into what looked like an office from the 1980s. Brown shag carpet and bulky beige computers sat on metal desks. Cigarette smoke hung in the air. A woman with big hair and shoulder pads typed at a keyboard. But when she turned toward me, her face was blurry, like a photo out of focus. "Hey," I called out. My voice echoed strangely. The woman didn't respond. She kept typing on a computer that showed green text on a black screen. The elevator dinged behind me. I jumped back inside just as the door started closing. My heart pounded against my ribs. The floor indicator now showed 12. The elevator moved again, this time with a grinding noise I'd never heard before. My hands shook as I pressed the lobby button repeatedly. Nothing happened. Then the display changed to 19 by. When the doors opened again, I saw our modern office. But something was wrong. Dead plants littered the floor, and dust covered everything. Papers were scattered everywhere, and chairs lay toppled. Through the windows, I saw a red sky and what looked like ruins where neighboring buildings should have been. The air felt hot and stale. A sound came from down the hall, shuffling footsteps. I hit the closed door button hard enough to hurt my finger. The door shut just as something rounded the corner. Something that walked like a person but wasn't shaped quite right. My breathing came in sharp gasps. Sweat ran down my back. The elevator moved again, and the display showed symbols I didn't recognize. The next floor looked like our office from last week. I saw myself sitting at my desk, working late. The other me didn't look up when I called out. I watched myself check my phone, sigh, and start packing up to leave. I knew exactly when this was. The night before the server migration started. I stepped fully into the office. "Hey," I shouted at myself. The other me walked right past me toward the elevator. My shoulder brushed against his, and the world tilted. A spike of pain shot through my head. I stumbled back into the elevator, dizzy and nauseated. The other me had vanished. The display now showed. The next floor opened onto a vast server room I'd never seen before. Rows of black cabinets stretched into darkness. Red warning lights flashed silently. The air felt electric, making my skin tingle. As I watched, the servers began to melt, dripping like wax onto the floor. I slammed the closed door button. My phone showed 11:47 p.m. It hadn't changed since this started. I tried calling security, but there was no signal. The screen flickered and died. The elevator stopped again. This time the doors opened onto our office lobby. But underwater, fish swam past the security desk. Seaweed waved where the potted plants should be. Water lapped at the elevator threshold but didn't flow in. I could see movement in the murky distance, something large with too many fins. Floor after floor showed impossible scenes. Our office during what looked like World War II with sandbags at the windows and propaganda posters on the walls. Our office has a greenhouse, trees growing through the ceiling, vines covering everything. Our office has a crime scene, yellow tape and numbered markers everywhere but no people. My watch still said 11:47 p.m. My phone remained dead. I lost count of how many floors I'd seen. The next stop showed our office as it normally looked, but empty. On my desk sat a cup of coffee, steam rising. My jacket hung on my chair. My computer screen showed an error message. Timeline divergence detected. Attempting to reconcile. I approached my desk slowly. The coffee cup was mine. I recognized the chip on the handle. The coffee was still hot. On the screen, the error message changed. Multiple instances detected. Initiating emergency protocol. The building's fire alarm suddenly blared to life. Red emergency lights began flashing. I ran back to the elevator, but the doors had already closed. The floor indicator showed an error in red text. I pressed the call button. Nothing happened. I could hear heavy footsteps approaching from the stairwell. The door handle began to turn. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. I dove inside just as something entered the office. Something tall and dark that moved like stop-motion animation. The elevator plunged downward faster than before. The display flashed random numbers and symbols. My stomach lurched into my throat. The cable screamed. When the doors opened again, I saw myself stepping into the elevator at 11:47 p.m., just starting this whole nightmare. The other me looked tired, ready to go home after a long day of server migration work. He hadn't yet noticed anything wrong. I tried to shout a warning, but no sound came out. The other me pressed the lobby button. Our eyes met for a split second. The other me's expression changed from tired to terrified. The door slammed shut. The elevator shook violently. I fell to my knees. The display showed every number and symbol it had shown before, cycling faster and faster. Then everything stopped. The doors opened onto the lobby, the real lobby. The night security guard looked up from his desk. "Everything okay, Mr. Chen?" Thought I heard the elevator acting up. I stepped out on shaking legs. My watch showed 11:48 p.m. My phone came back to life, buzzing with delayed notifications. "Fine," I managed to say. "Everything's fine." I walked to my car in the parking garage. Everything looked normal, but as I drove home, I checked my rearview mirror more than usual. And when I got home, I took the stairs to my apartment instead of the elevator. The next day at work, nobody else seemed to notice anything strange. The server migration had gone perfectly, but sometimes, when I'm working late, I hear the elevator make that grinding noise again. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see numbers on the display that shouldn't exist. I take the stairs now, all 27 flights. I tell people it's for the exercise. But last week, I saw something strange in the stairwell. Just for a moment through the window, I saw that red sky again. And now, when I check my phone late at night, it sometimes shows 11:47 p.m., no matter what time. It really is. I've started looking for a new job, something on the ground floor, because I know what happens at 11:47 p.m. in tall buildings. I know about the wrong floors, the ones that don't exist, but are there anyway? The ones that show you things you shouldn't see. And I know that somewhere, some version of that elevator, I'm still riding up and down, opening doors on impossible floors, trying to find my way back to the right timeline. Sometimes, late at night. I wonder if I ever really left. The first call came 3 weeks ago. I remember because it was my first night shift alone at Midwest Customer Solutions after training. The caller knew my mother died when I was 12. Nobody at work knew that. Nobody in my life knew that except my sister, and she passed away last year. I sit at my desk now, staring at the clock on my computer screen. It's 1:58 a.m. My hands are sweating. The phone will ring in 2 minutes. It always does. I started this job because I needed the money. The night shift paid better, and I figured dealing with angry customers at 2 a.m. was worth the extra $3 an hour. The training was basic: how to use the systems, how to talk to customers, how to follow the scripts. Everything seemed normal until that first call. The cubicle walls around me are gray and plain. The office is almost empty at this hour. There's just me, 2 other operators on the far side of the room, and Marcus, the supervisor, who spends most of his time in his office watching Netflix. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, and the air conditioning makes everything too cold. 1:59 a.m. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. I've tried calling in sick on previous nights. Marcus threatened to fire me if I missed another shift. I've tried to trace the number. It always shows up as unknown. I've tried to record the calls, but the recording system shows static every time. The phone rings. The same number. Unknown. My hand shakes as I move the mouse to accept the call. I have to answer. It's my job. If I don't, Marcus will write me up again. "Thank you for calling Midwest Customer Solutions. This is David. How can I help you today?" The voice is always the same. Female, older, scratchy, like she smokes too much. David Sullivan, 155 Oak Street, apartment 3B, born September 15th, 1992 at St. Mary's Hospital in Chicago. My throat tightens. "Ma'am, I need to know how I can assist you today. Your mother bled out in the bathtub on July 8th, 2004. You found her. You were wearing a blue Cubs t-shirt with a ketchup stain on the collar. You never told anyone about the note she left. You burned it in the backyard that night." My hands are shaking harder now. She's right about the shirt. She's right about the note. I never told anyone about burning it, not even the police. Who are you? You have a scar on your left knee from when you fell off your bike at age 7. You told everyone at school that you got it fighting a dog, but really you were trying to impress Jessica Martinez by riding with no hands. Sweat runs down my back. The office feels colder. What do you want? You wet the bed until you were 10. Your father used to hit you with his belt when it happened. That's why you can sleep without the bathroom light on even now. I grip the edge of my desk. Stop. You steal small things from stores. Sometimes candy bars, pens. Last week, you took a magazine from Walgreens and didn't pay for it. You like the rush. It makes you feel in control. My chest feels tight. How does she know these things? I've never told anyone about the stealing. It's my secret shame. Why are you doing this? Your sister, Sarah, didn't really die in a car accident last year. She killed herself. You knew she was depressed, but you ignored her calls that week because you were too busy with your new girlfriend. The guilt eats at you every day. Tears burn in my eyes. Please stop. You dream about her 3 times a week. In the dreams, she's trying to tell you something, but you can never hear her words. You wake up crying and don't go back to sleep. I want to hang up, but every time I've tried that before, the phone just rings again and again until I listen to everything she has to say. Your girlfriend Emily is cheating on you with her coworker, Mike. They meet at the Motel 6 on Reynolds Road every Thursday during her lunch break. You saw her car there last week, but told yourself it was someone else. My stomach lurches. I did see Emily's car at that motel. I've been trying to convince myself I was wrong. You have $4032.17 in your checking account right now. Your rent is due in 3 days and you're short $200. You're thinking about asking your Aunt Linda for money, but you're too ashamed because you still haven't paid her back from last time. The accuracy of these details makes me dizzy. I checked my balance an hour ago. It was exactly that amount. At age 15, you killed your neighbor's cat by accident when you were practicing driving in your dad's car. You buried it behind the garage and let everyone think it ran away. Mrs. Henderson put up missing posters for months. She cried every time she saw you. My hands are trembling so badly I can barely hold the phone. These are things I've never spoken aloud, things I've tried to forget. Stop, please. I can't. You have a mole on your lower back. That's getting bigger. You're worried it might be cancer, but you can afford to see a doctor. Sometimes you stand in front of the mirror and take pictures of it with your phone, comparing them to see if it's growing. I touched my back instinctively. I took another picture just this morning. Who are you? How do you know these things? Your father isn't really in Florida. He's in prison in Indiana for fraud. You tell everyone he retired to Tampa because you're ashamed. You haven't visited him once in 3 years. Each revelation feels like a punch to the gut. Every secret, every shame, every hidden thing I've tried to bury. What do you want from me? You have a knife in your desk drawer. You brought it to work 2 weeks ago because you thought you might need protection from me, but you know it won't help. I look at the drawer, the knife is there, hidden under some papers. You're going to die soon, David Sullivan. Very soon. And nobody will miss you because you've pushed everyone away. You'll die alone in your apartment, and it will be 3 days before anyone finds you. My heart is racing so fast I think it might explode. That's not true. You can know that. You're running out of time, David. The pain in your chest isn't anxiety. The headaches aren't from stress. The dizziness isn't because you skipped meals. You should have gone to the doctor months ago, but now it's too late. I've been having chest pains and headaches and dizzy spells. Why are you telling me this? Because someone has to. Because you need to know. Because the truth always comes out in the end. Please, just tell me who you are. Look at your computer screen, David. I glance at my monitor. The time reads 3:33 a.m. That's impossible. It was just 2 a.m. a few minutes ago. How did you check your phone? I pull the phone away from my ear and look at the call display. No active call. No record of any call in the system. My hands are shaking as I check the call logs. Nothing between 2 a.m. and now. No unknown numbers. No incoming calls at all. I stand up. My legs weak. The office is empty. Marcus' office is dark. The other operators are gone. Their computers are turned off. My chest hurts. Really hurts. A sharp stabbing pain that radiates down my left arm. I reach for my cell phone to call 911, but my fingers are numb. I can grip it properly. It falls to the floor. The pain is intense now. I can't breathe. The room is spinning. I try to call out for help, but no sound comes out. My knees buckle. The last thing I see is the computer screen changing. The time display disappears, replaced by text. Goodbye, David Sullivan. Say hello to your mother for me. Everything goes black. I wake up in a hospital bed 3 days later. The doctors tell me I had a massive heart attack. They say if the cleaning lady hadn't found me when she did, I would have died. I try to tell them about the calls, about the voice, about everything she knew. They give me psychiatric referrals and prescribe anti-anxiety medication. I quit my job at the call center. I moved to a new apartment. I changed my phone number, but every night at 2 a.m. my phone rings. The unknown caller. And every night I answer because now I know something she doesn't. I survived. I changed the future she predicted. I'm still here, but she knows other things. New things. Things that are gonna happen. Things I need to hear even though they terrify me. Last night she told me about the drunk driver who's going to run a red light tomorrow at 8:47 a.m. at the corner of 5th and Main. She told me which route to take to avoid it. The night before, she warned me about the carbon monoxide leak in my new apartment building. I called maintenance. They found the problem and fixed it before anyone got hurt. I don't know if she's trying to help me or torment me. Maybe both. But I know I'll keep answering when she calls. Because sometimes the scariest things aren't the secrets from our past, but the truths about our future. The phone is ringing now. It's 2 a.m. again. I answer it. "Hello, David," voice says. "Are you ready to hear what happens next?" I am. God help me, I am. Just moving boxes, checking inventory, the usual mind-numbing work. But that handprint, it was bigger than any human hand I'd ever seen, and it looked like it had been pressed into the metal of my apartment door, not just left there with paint or dirt. My head hurt from lack of sleep, and I just wanted to crash. Probably some kids messing around. I told myself, unlocking the door and stepping inside. The apartment was dark and quiet. Everything exactly where I'd left it, 12 hours ago. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter, kicked off my steel-toed boots, and headed straight for the shower. The hot water helped ease my tired muscles. I dried off, pulled on a clean t-shirt and boxers, and fell into bed. Sleep came fast and heavy. Bang! My eyes snapped open. The sound came from the kitchen, like someone had slammed a cabinet door. The digital clock on my nightstand showed 4:47 a.m. I lay perfectly still, listening. The apartment was dead quiet for about 30 seconds. Then I heard it. The sound of drawers being opened and closed slowly, methodically, one after another. My throat went dry. I lived alone. Nobody else had keys to my place. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but my fingers found empty space. Then I remembered I had left it charging in the kitchen. Another drawer opened, the sound of metal utensils rattling. My heart pounded against my ribs as I eased out of bed. The floor creaked under my feet, and the sounds in the kitchen stopped immediately. Complete silence fell over the apartment. I had a baseball bat in my closet. Moving as quietly as possible, I retrieved it, gripping the handle so hard my knuckles turned white. The bedroom door was open just a crack, showing a slice of the dark hallway leading to the kitchen. More silence than footsteps. Heavy ones, but not like shoes or boots on the floor. More like bare feet, wet bare feet, slapping against the linoleum. I raised the bat and edged toward the door. The footsteps grew closer, moving down the hallway toward my room, but something was wrong with the rhythm. It wasn't the normal left-right pattern of human walking. It was irregular, like the feet were hitting the ground at odd intervals. A shadow passed through the slice of hallway visible through the door crack. My chest tightened. The shadow was too tall, too wide to be human, and moved. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I could hear breathing now. Wet, raspy breathing that sounded like it was coming through a throat full of liquid. The door began to swing open, slow and steady. I raised the bat higher, ready to swing, but when I saw what stood in the doorway, my arms went limp. It was tall, so tall its head nearly touched the ceiling. Its skin was a sickly gray color, stretched too tight over an emaciated frame, but its proportions were all wrong. The arms hung down past its knees, ending in hands bigger than dinner plates. Hands that matched the print on my door. Its legs bent backward at the knees, like a bird's. And its face. The face had no features except for a mouth that split its head from ear to ear, filled with row after row of needle-sharp teeth. Dark liquid, not water, too thick to be water, dripped from its chin onto my carpet. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The thing's mouth opened wider than any mouth should be able to open, and that wet breathing got louder. The smell hit me then, like rotten meat and stagnant water. It took a step into the room. The backward bent legs made its movement jerky and unnatural. Those massive hands swung at its sides, fingers twitching. My survival instinct finally kicked in. I swung the bat as hard as I could. It connected with the thing's ribs with a solid thunk, but the bat just bounced off like I'd hit a concrete wall. The impact sent vibrations up my arms, making me drop the weapon. The creature didn't even flinch. Instead, it reached for me with one of those huge hands. I ducked under its arm and ran. My shoulder slammed into the door frame as I bolted past it, but I barely felt the pain. Pure adrenaline drove me down the hallway toward the front door. Behind me, I heard it moving, those wet footsteps speeding up, getting closer. I reached the front door and grabbed the handle. It didn't turn. The door wouldn't open. I looked down. The deadbolt was unlocked. The chain wasn't on, but the door wouldn't budge, like it had been welded shut. The footsteps stopped. Hot breath hit the back of my neck, smelling like decay. Slowly I turned around. It filled the hallway from floor to ceiling now, somehow even larger than before. That grotesque mouth smiled, showing rows of teeth that went all the way down its throat. One massive hand reached for me. I dove to the side, rolling across the living room floor. My shoulder hit the coffee table, sending magazines scattering. The creature followed, its head brushing against the ceiling, leaving wet marks on the white paint. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the kitchen. My phone was still there on the counter, charging. I grabbed it, fingers trembling as I tried to dial 911. The screen was black, dead, impossible. It had been charging for hours. A shadow fell over me. I turned to see the creature filling the kitchen doorway, its body contorted to fit through the opening. Those hands reached for me again, fingers spreading wide enough to wrap around my entire torso. I grabbed the first weapon I could find, a knife from the dish rack. The blade was still wet from washing. I slashed at the nearest hand. The knife cut deep into the gray flesh, but instead of blood, black water poured from the wound. It splashed onto the floor, hissing and steaming where it touched. The creature made a sound then, a high-pitched keening that made my teeth vibrate and my ears pop. The wounded hand withdrew, but the other one shot out faster than I could react. Fingers like steel cables wrapped around my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. The creature lifted me off the ground effortlessly. It pulled me closer to that terrible face. The mouth opened wider and wider, jaw unhinging like a snake. The stench of death rolled over me in waves. Row after row of teeth gleamed in the dim light from the window. In desperate panic, I stabbed the knife into its wrist. More black water gushed out, running down my arm. Where it touched my skin, it burned like acid. I screamed in pain. The creature's grip loosened for just a second. I twisted free, landing hard on the kitchen floor. Black water was everywhere now, eating holes in the linoleum. Steam filled the air, carrying that rotting smell. I ran for the bathroom, the only room left with the door I could close. Behind me, the creature's keening grew louder, making the windows rattle in their frames. I slammed the bathroom door and turned the lock, knowing it wouldn't hold for long. The bathroom window was small, but I might be able to squeeze through. I climbed onto the toilet and reached for the latch. The door exploded inward, showering me with splinters. A hand bigger than my entire head reached through the doorway. I lost my balance and fell, cracking my head against the sink. Everything went fuzzy. I lay on the bathroom floor, blood trickling down my face, looking up at the creature as it squeezed its massive body through the doorway. Its mouth opened once more, but this time something else emerged from its throat, a long black tongue that writhed like a living thing. The tongue touched my leg. Instant searing pain shot through my body. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My vision started to go dark around the edges. The last thing I saw was that massive mouth descending toward my face, rows of teeth stretching into infinity. Then everything went black. I woke up in my bed. Sunlight streamed through the windows. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then I saw the holes eaten into my carpet by the black water, the splintered remains of my bathroom door. The handprint, pressed deep into the metal of my front door, was now visible from the inside too. That was 3 days ago. I haven't slept since then. Every night at exactly 4:47 a.m., I hear those wet footsteps in my kitchen. Every night they get closer to my bedroom. I've tried staying at hotels, sleeping in my car, even just driving all night. But no matter where I am, when that time comes, I hear those footsteps. Last night I found another handprint. This one was pressed into the hood of my car. Tonight will be the 4th night. I don't think I'll survive to see a 5th. The sun is setting now. In a few hours it'll be 4:47 a.m. again. I can already hear water dripping somewhere in my apartment. The sound is getting louder. The cricket stopped first, then the frogs. In the 3 years I'd lived here, that had never happened. I stood in my backyard at 11:47 p.m., holding Mac's leash, watching him stare at the tray line. His hackles were up. Every muscle in his German Shepherd body was rigid. I checked my phone again. It was 11:48 p.m. The silence pressed against my ears. No wind, no rustling leaves, nothing. "Come on, buddy," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. "Do your business so we can go inside." Max wouldn't move. His ears were forward, his tail straight out behind him. I'd seen him react to deer, coyotes, and the neighbor's cat, but this was different. He didn't make a sound. No growling, no barking, just staring. I swept my phone's flashlight across the trees. The beam caught the white bark of the birches, the dark trunks of the oaks. Nothing moved, but something felt wrong. The darkness between the trees seemed deeper than usual. Max's leash went taut as he took 3 slow steps backward, pressing against my legs. I felt his trembling through my jeans. The rational part of my brain said to go inside, that it was just some animal in the woods. But my hand was sweating on the leash, and my heart hammered against my ribs. I took another look at the tree line. The flashlight beam seemed weaker now, like the darkness was eating it. That's when I saw the first movement, a slight shifting of shadows between 2 oak trees. I blinked hard, trying to focus. The darkness rippled again, like black water. Max. Inside. Now. I started backing up, toward the house, trying to keep my eyes on the trees. The motion stopped, but I could feel something watching us. The pressure of its attention made my skin crawl. We were 15 feet from the back door when Max let out a whimper, not his usual whine for attention or food. This was a sound of pure fear. I looked down at him for just a second, then back up. The darkness between the trees had changed. It had shape now and depth, like a hole had opened in the world. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys to the back door. The metal clinked loudly in the silence, too loudly. The shape in the trees shifted again. It seemed closer, though I hadn't seen it move. I got the door open and pushed Max inside. As I followed him in, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps in the grass behind me. Not animal footsteps. They were too deliberate, too heavy, and they were getting closer. I slammed the door shut and locked it, then hit every light switch I could reach. The kitchen and living room blazed with light. Max ran to the corner and crouched there, trembling. I grabbed my phone to call someone, to the police. What would I tell them? That the darkness was walking. The screen showed no signal, not low bars, no signal at all. I tried the landline. Dead silence. No dial tone. Something scraped against the back door. A long, slow sound like nails on wood. I backed away, keeping my eyes fixed on the door. The scraping moved to the window. Then it stopped. The kitchen lights flickered once, twice. Max whimpered again. I ran to my bedroom and grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed. When I came back to the kitchen, all the lights were still on, but they seemed dimmer. The air felt thick and hard to breathe. The scraping sound started again, this time at every window at once. Like whatever was out there had split into multiple things. Or maybe it had always been multiple things, and they'd just been waiting. I checked my phone again, 11:52 p.m. Only 5 minutes had passed since we'd been outside. It felt like hours. The lights flickered again, longer this time. In the moments of darkness, I heard something new, a sound like wet cloth being torn coming from the walls. When the lights came back on, the windows were completely black, not just dark but black like they'd been painted over. Max started growling, the first aggressive sound he'd made all night. He was staring at the ceiling. I looked up, and my throat closed up. The darkness was seeping through the corners where the walls met the ceiling, like black ink spreading through water. I grabbed Max's collar and pulled him toward the front door. We had to get out. We had to get to the car. But when I opened the front door, there was only blackness. Not night darkness, but absolute. It swallowed my flashlight beam completely. We retreated to the living room. The darkness was coming through every crack now, pooling on the floor like oil. The lights were barely working, creating islands of dimming yellow in the growing dark. Max's growl turned into a series of sharp barks. He was facing the kitchen doorway. I turned, raising the bat. Something stood in the doorway. It was roughly human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. Its edges weren't solid. They shifted and wavered like smoke. But its center was the darkest thing I'd ever seen, darker than the blackness around it. It took a step forward. The sound its foot made on the hardwood floor was wet and heavy. Max's barking stopped abruptly. When I glanced at him, he was frozen. Every muscle was locked. The thing in the doorway tilted what might have been its head. The movement was jerky and unnatural, like it was trying to mimic human motion but didn't quite understand how it worked. My back hit the wall. I hadn't realized I was moving backward. The bat felt useless in my hands. but I gripped it tighter anyway. The thing took another step. The lights dimmed further. I could feel its attention on me. Like physical pressure, the air grew colder. It raised what might have been an arm. The limb stretched longer than any human arm could, reaching toward me. Its fingers were too long and too numerous. They moved like tentacles. Max suddenly unfroze and launched himself at the thing, teeth bared. His jaws snapped shut on empty air as the figure dissolved into smoke. For a moment, I thought it was gone. Then the smoke rushed forward, surrounding Max. His angry barks turned to yelps of pain and silence. The smoke pulled back. Max lay on the floor, not moving. No! I swung the bat through the smoke. It passed through with no resistance. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. My breath came out in white clouds. The smoke reformed into a figure, closer now. Close enough that I could see there was depth to its darkness, like looking into a well that went down forever. The cold radiating from it burned my skin. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The figure reached for me again. Its fingers brushed my cheeks, sending jolts of icy pain through my skull. Images flashed through my mind, endless darkness, shapes that couldn't exist, a hunger older than time. The lights went out completely. I felt more fingers on my face, my neck, my chest. Each touch was like being stabbed with an icicle. The thing was all around me now. I couldn't see it in the darkness, but I could feel its hunger. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. I couldn't breathe. The cold was inside me now, spreading through my veins. My thoughts were getting sluggish. Something warm pressed against my leg. Max was up, pressing close, whining softly. The sound cut through the fog in my head. I swung the bat again, this time with all my strength. It hit something solid. The figure screeched, a sound like metal tearing or lines breaking. The cold loosened its grip. I ran. I couldn't see anything, but I knew my house. 3 steps to the front door. I slammed into it first, felt it give way. Max was right behind me. We burst out into the night. Real night, with stars and a quarter moon. The crickets were singing, frogs croaked in the distance. I ran to my car, Max right beside me. My hands shook so badly that I dropped the keys twice before getting the door open. We got in. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway so fast that I hit the mailbox. As we sped away, I looked in the rearview mirror. My house was dark, but it was just regular darkness. The thing was gone, or at least I couldn't see it anymore. I drove to a motel 50 miles away, paying cash. Max wouldn't leave my side, not even to eat or drink. We sat on the bed, both of us trembling, until sunrise. I called in sick to work and spent the day making arrangements. By noon, I had a real estate agent lined up to sell the house. By evening, I had a small apartment in the city rented month to month. I never went back to the house. I hired people to pack up my things, told the real estate agent to sell it as is. She probably thought I was crazy taking such a loss on the property. Let her think that. It's been 6 months. Max and I live in the apartment now. The city noises bother him sometimes, sirens, traffic, people, but he doesn't complain. Neither of us misses the quiet of the countryside. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about that night, about what would have happened if Max hadn't gotten up when he did, about what that thing wanted, what it was. But mostly I try not to think about it at all. I keep the lights on at night, and when I hear the crickets through my apartment window, I'm grateful for the noise. Max still sleeps pressed against my leg. Sometimes he whimpers in his sleep, and I wonder if he dreams about it. I wake him up when he does that. Better not to let those dreams run their course. I check the local news from my old town sometimes. 3 houses in my old neighborhood have gone up for sale in the past 6 months. All sold well below market value. All the families moved out in a hurry. I wonder if they saw it too. If it's still there, hiding in the darkness between the trees, waiting. But I won't go back to find out. Some questions are better left unanswered. The crickets are chirping outside my window right now. Max is sleeping peacefully for once. The city lights shine through my blinds, keeping the darkness at bay. That's enough. It has to be enough. But sometimes when I'm almost asleep, I feel phantom fingers on my face, cold as death. And I wonder if it followed us, if it's just waiting for the right moment for me to let my guard down. So I keep the lights on, and I listen to the crickets. And I try to convince myself that as long as I can hear them, everything is okay. But I know better now. I know that when the crickets stop, the real darkness begins. The first time I saw someone running between the gravestones at Foster Hill Cemetery, I told myself it had to be another delivery driver taking a shortcut. Nobody else would be crazy enough to cut through there at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, but delivery drivers don't move that fast, and they definitely don't leave those kinds of footprints. I've been doing late-night deliveries for 3 years now. The pay is decent, especially with tips, and the roads are empty. Tuesday night started like any other shift. I had a stack of orders from that new Thai place downtown, mostly going to college students cramming for finals. The GPS kept trying to route me around Foster Hill Cemetery, adding an extra 10 minutes to each trip. After the third delivery, I decided to save some time and cut through the cemetery grounds. Other drivers did it all the time. The cemetery gates were always open. Some historical preservation rule from back when it was first built in 1843. The narrow access road wound between sections of tilting headstones and crumbling monuments. My headlights swept across names weathered almost to nothing. The shadows of iron crosses and stone angels stretched out across browning grass. I kept my speed down to avoid bottoming out on the bumpy road. The suspension in my Honda Civic wasn't great, even when it was new, which was 140,000 miles ago. The Thai food in my passenger seat filled the car with the smell of pad Thai and green curry. My stomach growled. Maybe I'd treat myself to some leftover tom yum soup if any orders got canceled. About halfway through the cemetery, movement caught my eye. At first I thought it was just shadows from my headlights playing across the gravestones. Then I saw it clearly, a figure sprinting between the rows of headstones, moving way faster than any normal person could run. They crossed about 50 feet of open ground in the time it took me to blink. I hit the brakes. My takeout order slid forward and thumped against the dashboard. I squinted through the windshield, trying to spot the runner again. Nothing moved except branches swaying in the wind. Just tired, I muttered. Brain playing tricks. I'd been doing doubles all week to cover for another driver who was out sick. Lack of sleep could make you see all kinds of weird stuff. I started driving again, a little faster now. The sooner I got through this place, the better. I kept my eyes locked straight ahead on the road. Don't look at the graves. Don't look for movements in the shadows. Just drive. Something flashed past in my peripheral vision. This time on the passenger side. Fast. Too fast. Like a video being played at double speed. I jerked the wheel and nearly clipped a marble headstone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't help looking this time. In the red glow of my brake lights, I saw a trail of footprints in the frost-covered grass. They led straight toward my car, stopping just a few feet from the passenger door. The prints were deep, like whoever made them had been running hard, really hard. I hit the gas. The engine whined as I accelerated down the narrow cemetery road, not caring about the suspension anymore. I kept checking my mirrors, but all I could see were shadows and stone monuments in the fading red glow of my taillights. The rest of my shift was a blur. I delivered the Thai food on autopilot, barely registering the customers or their tips. By the time I finished my last order at 2 a.m., I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing in the cemetery. Sleep deprivation could do strange things to your mind. I pointed my car toward home, taking the long way around Foster Hill. No more shortcuts tonight. The roads were empty except for the occasional semi-truck. My eyelids felt heavy. Just 15 more minutes and I'd be home in bed. A few blocks from my apartment, I had to stop for gas. The fluorescent lights of the gas and go made everything look harsh and artificial. I was the only customer. The night clerk didn't even look up from his phone when I went inside to pay. Back at my car, I noticed something that made my whole body go cold. There were muddy footprints on the passenger side of my Honda. They started a few inches from the door and continued along the side of the car as if someone had been running alongside me. The mud was reddish-brown, the same color as the soil in Foster Hill Cemetery. I walked around the car in a daze, following the prints. They went all the way to the back bumper, then they just stopped, like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. My hands shook as I opened the driver's door. The inside of the car smelled different. Under the lingering scent of Thai food, there was something else. Something musty and organic, like old leaves and wet earth. I drove home doing exactly the speed limit. Hands clenched on the steering wheel. Every red light felt like it lasted an hour. I kept checking my mirrors, but the streets behind me were empty. When I finally parked outside my apartment building, I ran inside without looking back. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I started to drift off, I jerked awake, thinking I heard footsteps running past my second-floor window. Around 4 a.m., I finally fell into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, everything felt distant and unreal, like a bad dream. The muddy footprints were still there on my car, but they looked less sinister in the daylight. I told myself there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe some kid had played a prank while I was delivering food. Maybe another driver had splashed mud on my car. Maybe my phone buzzed. A text from my supervisor. Driver shortage tonight. Need you to cover the late shift again. Time and a half. I stared at the message for a long time. The smart thing would be to say no. Take a night off, get some real sleep. But my rent was due next week. And time and a half was time and a half. Okay, I texted back. I'll do it. The sun was setting when I pulled into the Thai restaurant's parking lot to start my shift. I had a new rule. No cutting through Foster Hill Cemetery, no matter how much time it would save. I'd take the long way around and stick to well-lit streets. The first few hours of my shift were normal. Students ordered pad thai. Families got spring rolls and curry. The usual Tuesday night crowd. I kept to main roads even when my GPS tried to route me through the cemetery. The detour added time to each delivery, but it was worth it for peace of mind. Around 10:30 p.m., I got an order going to an address right on the other side of Foster Hill. Even taking the long way around would add 20 minutes to the delivery time. The customer had already called twice asking where their food was. I sat in my car, staring at the GPS. The cemetery route would take 7 minutes. The safe route would take 27. The customer was already angry. My rating would take a hit. Too many low ratings and I'd lose my spot in the priority queue for orders. This is stupid, I said out loud. It's just a cemetery. Nothing happened last night. You were tired and seeing things. Before I could talk myself out of it, I turned onto the road leading to Foster Hill's gates. The entrance looked different tonight, darker. The iron gates cast long shadows in my headlights. As I drove through them, I felt a pressure change in my ears, like when you drive up a steep hill. I kept my eyes straight ahead, focusing on the access road. Don't look at the graves. Don't look for movement. Just drive. Get through as fast as possible. Halfway through the cemetery, my phone lost signal. The GPS screen went black. Great. Just great. I knew the route well enough to finish the delivery, but being cut off from communication made me nervous. The access road curved around a large marble mausoleum. As I turned the corner, my headlights swept across something that made me slam on the brakes. Footprints, dozens of them. Maybe hundreds crisscrossing the road ahead of me. They were pressed deep into the dirt like they'd been made by someone running at incredible speed. And they were fresh. I put the car in reverse. To hell with the delivery time. To hell with my rating. I wasn't staying here another second. The engine revved, but the car didn't move. The wheels spun in place, kicking up gravel. I looked in my rearview mirror and felt my stomach drop. More footprints were appearing on the road behind me, materializing out of nowhere one after another, getting closer to my car. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The footprints reached my back bumper. Then they started appearing along the driver's side of the car, heading toward the front. Something moved in my peripheral vision. I turned my head slowly, fighting against every instinct that told me not to look. A face pressed against my driver's side window. A human face, but wrong. The skin was gray and sunken. The eyes were completely black. The mouth was stretched into an impossibly wide grin, showing too many teeth. I threw the car into drive and floored it. The tires caught traction and shot forward. In my side mirror, I saw a figure running beside the car. It was keeping pace easily, even though my speedometer showed 40 miles per hour, then 50, then 60. The figure's movements were wrong. Its legs pumped too fast, like a video being played at triple speed. Its arms swung at impossible angles, but it matched my car's speed exactly, staying right alongside me. I reached the cemetery gates, doing 70. As I shot through them, the figure disappeared, just vanished between 1 second and the next. In my rearview mirror, I could see Foster Hill Cemetery receding into the darkness. Nothing moved between the graves. My phone came back to life. GPS rerouting to account for my new position. The pressure in my ears released. Normal street sounds filtered back in. Distant traffic, a dog barking, the hum of power lines. I pulled into a gas station parking lot and sat there shaking for 20 minutes. When I finally worked up the courage to look, There were fresh footprints all along the side of my car. They started at the back bumper and went all the way to the front wheel well. The mud was still wet. I called my supervisor and told him I was done for the night. Family emergency. He wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I drove straight home, taking main roads the whole way. Every time I stopped at a red light, I checked my mirrors for running figures. That was 3 days ago. I haven't gone back to work. I haven't answered my supervisor's calls. The footprints are still on my car. I can't bring myself to wash them off. Sometimes at night I hear running footsteps outside my apartment. Fast footsteps, too fast. I found a new job today, stocking shelves at a grocery store. Day shift only. The pay isn't as good as deliveries, but at least I never have to drive through Foster Hill Cemetery again. But here's the thing that really scares me. I keep getting notifications from my delivery app, even though I deleted it from my phone. Orders going to addresses on the other side of the cemetery. The suggested route always cuts straight through Foster Hill. And sometimes late at night, I see my car's headlights turn on by themselves. I think something followed me home from that cemetery. Something that runs too fast and grins too wide. Something that wants me to go back. I'm writing this all down because I need someone to know what happened. Maybe someone else has seen it too. Maybe someone knows what it is or how to make it go away. All I know is that I'm not making any more deliveries through Foster Hill Cemetery. And if you're a driver in this area, neither should you. Take the long way around. The extra time is worth it. Because whatever is running between those graves, it isn't human. And once it notices you, it doesn't forget. I hear footsteps outside my window now. The running kind. I'm on the second floor. They're getting closer. I heard the same footsteps again last night. Right above my head, clear as day. Walking back and forth across the roof of the Riverside office building. The thing is, I've worked here as a janitor for 8 years. I'm the only one with access to that roof. The door stays locked. I check it 3 times every night, but someone or something keeps getting up there anyway. It started 3 weeks ago. I was doing my usual night rounds, checking all the doors and windows before leaving at 11 p.m. That's when I first noticed the cigarette butts scattered near the air conditioning units on the roof. Marlboro Reds. I don't smoke. I sweep them up, dump them in my garbage bag, and double-check the roof access door. The heavy steel door is secured with both a deadbolt and a padlock. The keys hang on my belt loop. Master set number 4, issued to me by building management when I started this job. Nobody else has copies. I've asked. The next night, more cigarette butts and footprints in the gravel. Size 11 or 12 work boots, different from my size 9 sneakers. I take pictures with my phone and send them to my supervisor, but he just tells me to make sure I'm locking up properly. I am every single night. Tonight started like any other. I arrived at 3 p.m. for my shift, collected my cleaning supplies from the basement storage room, and started working my way up from the ground floor. There are 20 floors of offices, all the same, empty cubicles, conference rooms, break areas, vacuuming carpet, emptying trash, cleaning bathrooms, wiping down surfaces. The routine is mindless, but comforting. The building empties out around 6 p.m. By 7, it's just me and the hum of the fluorescent lights. I like the quiet, usually. At 9:47 p.m., I'm mopping the 19th floor when I hear a thud, 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 above my head. The footsteps are slow and deliberate, moving from the south side of the building toward the north. My hands tighten around the mop handle. The steps stop directly overhead. I stand perfectly still, barely breathing. 1 minute passes. 2. Then the footsteps start again, faster this time, pacing back and forth. My heart pounds against my ribs. Sweat runs down my back, soaking through my uniform shirt. I should go up there. That's what I keep telling myself. Just take the stairs to the 20th floor, unlock the roof access door, confront whoever it is. But my legs won't move. The footsteps continue for another 5 minutes, then stop. Silence fills the building again, broken only by the drip of my mop in the bucket and my own shaky breathing. I force myself to finish mopping the floor. My hands tremble as I wring out the mop head one final time. It's 10:15 p.m. when I finally take the service elevator to the 20th floor. The hallway is dark, except for the red exit signs at each end. I flip on my flashlight and walk to the roof access door. The deadbolt is still engaged. The padlock is secure. I press my ear against the cold metal and listen. Nothing. I unlock both locks and push the door open slowly. Cool night air hits my face. The gravel crunches under my feet as I step onto the roof. My flashlight beam sweeps across the empty expanse. Air conditioning units cast long shadows. The city lights spread out below, a grid of yellow and white. No one is here. But there, next to the north edge, 3 fresh cigarette butts. Marlboro Reds. Still warm. I bag them as evidence, even though I know my supervisor won't care. As I'm straightening up, something catches my eye. A scuff mark on the ledge, like someone sat there dangling their legs over the edge. My stomach churns. I back away from the ledge and hurry to the door, double-checking the locks, triple-checking them. I practically run through my final tasks, wanting to get out of here as fast as possible. But I can't stop thinking about those footsteps, about the cigarettes, about that scuff mark 20 stories above the street. The next day I arrive early. I need to check something. I head straight to the basement and pull out the building blueprints. They're old and yellowed, but still legible. I spread them across my break room table and start studying the roof access points. There's the main door I always use and one other, a secondary entrance that I never thought was important. A second door that was permanently sealed during renovations in 2012. And I squint at the faded text. An old maintenance hatch on the northwest corner that's not even visible anymore, supposedly covered by the new HVAC system. I spend my lunch break on the roof, investigating the area around the largest AC unit. Sure enough, there's a slight gap between the unit's base and the roof surface. If someone was determined enough, they might be able to squeeze through. But that's crazy. Who would go to that much trouble just to smoke cigarettes on a roof? I decide to set up a trap. Nothing dangerous, just some fishing line strung across the gap tied to an empty can. If anyone crawls through, they'll knock it over. You'll hear it from the floor below. A week passes. No footsteps. No cigarettes. The can stays upright. I start to relax. Maybe they found another spot to smoke. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. Then last night happened. I was cleaning the 20th floor bathrooms when the can clattered across the roof. My heart nearly stopped. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The roof access door was still locked. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in. When I finally pushed it open, the beam of my flashlight caught a figure crouching by the AC unit. They turned just for a second and I saw their face, or where their face should have been. There was just darkness, a void where features should be. Then they slipped into the gap and disappeared. I ran back inside, slammed the door, and called the police. They arrived 20 minutes later and found nothing. No cigarettes this time. No footprints. Just my fishing line scattered across the gravel and the empty can rolled against the ledge. They told me to call building security next time. Building security told me to call my supervisor. My supervisor told me to take a few days off, but I can't. I need this job. And more than that, I need to know what's happening up there. So here I am, sitting in my break room at 3 a.m., writing this all down while I wait. I brought my camera tonight, set up a motion sensor by the AC unit, hid a voice recorder under some gravel. The footsteps started again 10 minutes ago. They're different this time, lighter, almost playful. Like whoever or whatever is up there knows I'm listening. I should go check. The door is only 50 feet away. I have my flashlight, my phone, and my camera. Evidence that's all I need. Proof that I'm not crazy, but I can't move. My legs are leaden. My throat is dry. The footsteps are getting closer to the door now, slower, deliberate. Something scrapes against the metal. Once, twice. The handle turns. I know I locked it. I always lock it. But the handle is turning, and there are shadows under the door. They come through the walls. They always came through the walls. I should have checked the walls. The banging on my motel room door jolted me awake at 3:17 a.m. My head pounded, and the cheap digital clock's red numbers burned into my eyes. 3 loud knocks came again. "Hey man, open up," said a voice. It's Dave from last night. I sat up in the lumpy bed, my t-shirt damp with sweat. The voice wasn't familiar. I hadn't talked to anyone named Dave last night. I hadn't talked to anyone at all. "Come on," you said. I could crash here. We had a deal. My throat went dry. The fluorescent light from the parking lot leaked through gaps in the thin curtains, casting strips of sickly light across the stained carpet. Another series of knocks followed, more insistent this time. "I know you're in there," the voice said.
Don't act like you don't remember.
I stood up, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. The room spun slightly. My mouth tasted like stale coffee and cigarettes, though I didn't smoke. The last thing I remembered was driving into this roadside motel around 8 p.m., checking in, and falling into bed after 12 hours on the road. Nothing else. The door rattled in its frame as the man outside hit it again. I stepped closer, trying to see through the peephole, but it was blocked or painted over. "Look," the voice said, lower now. "I've got the front desk security footage right here on my phone. Shows you letting me in at midnight. We talked for over an hour. You really don't remember?" My stomach clenched. That was impossible. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, 3:19 a.m. No missed calls or messages. My wallet and keys sat next to it, untouched. Everything looked normal, but my head felt wrong, clouded. "I'm showing the manager if you don't open up. You promised me a place to sleep." I pressed my ear to the door. The man's breathing was heavy and ragged. The hallway's ice machine hummed in the background. "Fine," I said, my voice cracking. "Show me the footage first." Pulled your phone up to the peephole. A few seconds passed. Then, "Kent, peepholes are busted. Come to the front desk with me." "Well, watch it there." "No, slide your phone under the door." "That's a $1,000 phone, man." "I'm not sliding it under any doors. You know exactly who I am. We spent over an hour talking about my situation last night. You said you understood. Said you'd help me out." My hands shook as I double-checked the door's security chain and deadbolts. Both were locked. The man outside shifted his weight, making the thin floor creak. "I'm calling the police," I said. "Go ahead. I've got proof you invited me in." "You're the one going back on your word." I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera app. 12 new photos from last night appeared in my gallery. My stomach dropped. I hadn't taken any pictures. The first showed the motel's parking lot at night, empty except for my car and a beaten-up blue sedan I didn't recognize. The next several were blurry shots of the room's interior. The TV, the bathroom door, the window. In the final image, a man's reflection appeared in the mirror, but it wasn't me. He was older, maybe 50, with gray stubble and a red baseball cap. "Just check the timestamp on those pics you took," the voice said. 12:47 a.m. Ring any bells. Cold sweat ran down my back. I opened my recent calls, 3 outgoing calls between midnight and 2 a.m. to a number I didn't know. "Your phone's got the proof too, doesn't it?" He laughed a dry sound. "You really that drunk you forgot everything?" I hadn't had a drink in months. I scrolled through my text messages. Nothing new, but my browser history showed searches from 1:13 a.m., cheap motels near Highway 16, identity theft protection, and how to disappear completely. "Last chance," the man said. "Open up or in getting the manager." I backed away from the door, trying to control my breathing. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I had to think, had to figure out what happened in those missing hours. My laptop sat on the room's small desk. I opened it. The screen was already on, showing a local news website. The top story's headline made my blood run cold. "Police seek person of interest in gas station robbery." The grainy security camera image showed a man in a red baseball cap. "More knocking now. Time's up. You got 10 seconds. I grabbed my keys and wallet, shoving them in my pockets. The window, I could break it, run to my car, but my legs felt weak, unsteady. 10, 9, 8. The desk lamp flickered. I noticed something written on the notepad next to it, in my handwriting. "Let him in. He knows. Has to end tonight." 7, 6. My phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. "Remember now." 5-4. The lamp went out. In the darkness, I heard a key card slide into the door's electronic lock. The green light blinked on. 3. The deadbolt clicked open by itself. 2. The security chain snapped and broke free from the wall. Sign. The door swung open. The man in the red baseball cap stood in the hallway, holding up his phone. On the screen, security footage played. Me, 6 hours ago, smiling as I held the door open for him. "Ready to finish what we started?" he asked. I looked at the notepad again. Below my message, smaller words appeared, writing themselves. "You can run from yourself." The man stepped into the room. His face flickered like bad reception, becoming mine for a split second before settling back into its older features. He closed the door behind him. "Let's talk about last night," he said. "All of it." The clock read 3:23 a.m. Outside, my car's alarm began to wail. He sat in the room's only chair, perfectly still. You remember the gas station, don't you? What happened after you saw me there? I pressed my back against the far wall. I didn't stop at any gas stations. I drove straight here. He pulled out a receipt, held it up. Murphy's Gas and Go. 11:47 p.m. My signature at the bottom. You followed me, he said. Watched me go in, saw what I did. Then you followed me here, got the room next door, took all those pictures for evidence. Smart. Real smart. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. Check your trunk. I didn't follow anyone, I said. I don't know what you're talking about. He smiled. His teeth were stained yellow. No? Then why'd you make those calls to the police tip line? Why'd you write down my plate number? I glanced at the notepad again. More words had appeared. Blue sedan, PCR 847. You said you wanted to help, he continued. Said you understood about needing money, about desperation. Said you'd keep quiet if I split it with you. That's why you let me in. Why we talked so long. Making plans. The car alarm kept screaming. Nobody came to investigate. But then you got nervous, didn't you? Started having second thoughts. That's when you really started drinking. Found that bottle in your trunk. My hands went to my temples. The pounding in my head got worse. I don't drink, I said. Haven't touched it since the accident. He leaned forward. Since Sarah. The name hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't spoken it in 2 years. How do you know about her? You told me everything last night about the crash, about running, about trying to start over. He stood up. About how you never forgave yourself. The room spun. I slid down the wall until I sat on the floor. But you can run forever, he said. Can't hide from what you've done. That's what you said last night, right before you passed out. Right before you gave me your key card and told me to come back. I closed my eyes, tried to breathe when I opened them. He was kneeling in front of me. His face flickered again. My face, older, haunted. The gas station robbery, I said. How much did you take? We took, he corrected. 4 Talver. Your cuts in your trunk with the empty bottle and Sarah's picture is the one you always carry but pretend you don't. My phone buzzed one final time. The message showed a photo. My trunk open, revealing a paper bag full of cash. A bottle of cheap whiskey and a crumpled photograph I thought I'd burned years ago. Time to face it, he said. His voice was mine now, aged by guilt and time. Time to remember everything. The clock hit 3:33 a.m. The car alarm went silent. And slowly, horribly, I began to remember what I'd done. Not just last night, but 2 years ago on a rainy road when I'd had too much to drink, and Sarah had trusted me to drive her home. The man, my future self, my punishment, sat back in the chair and waited as the memories flooded back as I remembered who I really was, who I'd been running from. Ready to talk now? He asked. I nodded, the weight of 2 years of denial finally breaking. Yes, I said to myself, I'm ready. The sun rose 4 hours later. The motel room was empty except for me, a half-empty bottle, and a note in my handwriting. Same time next year. You can hide forever. In the parking lot, my car sat alone. The trunk was locked, but I knew what I'd find inside. The same things I'd been carrying all along, running from motel to motel, having the same conversation with myself, night after night, trying to drink away the truth. I checked out at 8 a.m. The manager said nothing about noise complaints or broken security chains. The security footage showed an empty hallway all night. No one had come to my door. But as I drove away, I checked my rearview mirror. A blue sedan followed at a distance, its driver wearing a red baseball cap, following me to the next motel, the next confrontation, until I finally stopped running. I checked my phone one last time. A new message waited. See you tonight. I didn't need to save the number, I already knew it by heart. My own. The first thing I noticed was the static. It crackled through my car's speakers like angry insects, drowning out the classic rock station I'd been listening to for the past 3 hours. I reached for the dial, trying to find a clear signal, but there was nothing but white noise on every frequency. That's when I heard it. My name whispered through the static, clear as day, David. My hand froze on the dial. The voice was soft, almost gentle, but something about it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. 2:37 a.m. The headlights cut through the darkness ahead, illuminating an empty stretch of Arizona highway. No other cars were in sight, just desert and cacti on both sides, their shadows twisted in the moonlight. I hadn't seen another vehicle for at least 40 minutes. The last sign of civilization had been a rundown gas station where I'd stopped to fill up and grab some coffee. The old man behind the counter had given me an odd look when I'd mentioned I was heading east on Route 60. The static continued, but the voice didn't return. I tried adjusting the antenna, but nothing changed. My throat felt dry. I reached for my coffee cup, but it was empty. The whisper came again, louder this time. "David, listen." I hit the brakes. The car slowed, tires crunching on the asphalt. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I needed to check my phone, maybe call someone. Just hearing another human voice would help clear my head. I pulled over to the shoulder, put the car in park, and grabbed my phone from the cup holder. The screen lit up, showing one bar of signal. There was a notification for an unsent message. My stomach dropped when I saw the sender. It was my own number. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. "Don't stop." The timestamp showed it was from 1 minute ago, but I hadn't touched my phone in hours. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in short gasps. The radio static suddenly grew louder, and through it I heard that whisper again. "David." Behind you, every muscle in my body tensed. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror. At first I saw nothing but darkness. Then a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, approaching fast. I threw the car into drive and pressed the gas pedal. The engine roared as I pulled back onto the highway. The headlights in my mirror grew larger. They were getting closer. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my number. Faster. The speedometer crept past 80, then 90. The headlights stayed with me. I couldn't make out what kind of vehicle it was. The lights were too bright, flooding my mirrors with white glare. The static on the radio changed pitch, becoming a high-pitched whine. Through it, I heard fragments of words, like pieces of a broken conversation. "Coming, can't let, find you." My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. The road ahead stretched endlessly into the darkness. No exits, no turnoffs, no other cars. Just me and whatever was behind me. The phone buzzed again. "Take the next right. There isn't one on the map." I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "Take a right." There was nothing but desert out there. I'd run right off the road into the cacti and rocks. The headlights behind me suddenly flared brighter, so bright I had to look away from the mirrors. The engine of the pursuing vehicle roared louder. I could feel it in my bones. Up ahead, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a break in the guardrail, and beyond it a dirt road I could swear hadn't been there a moment ago. It curved away into the darkness, heading north into the desert. The phone buzzed again. Now, I yanked the wheel hard to the right. My car skidded, tires screaming on the asphalt. For a moment I was sure I'd lose control, but somehow I made the turn. The car bounced violently as it hit the dirt road, my teeth clicking together painfully. In my rearview mirror, I watched the mysterious headlights shoot past a turnoff, continuing down the highway. They didn't slow down or try to follow. I kept driving on the dirt road, my heart still racing. After about a mile, I slowed down and stopped. The engine ticked as it cooled. The radio was silent now. Not even static came through the speakers. My phone buzzed one last time. Get out, walk 100 steps north, bring the phone. I sat there for a long moment, my hands still gripping the steering wheel. Every instinct told me to turn around and get back to the highway, drive until I found a town, a gas station, anything. But I got out of the car. The desert night was cold. My shoes crunched on the gravel as I started walking north, counting my steps. The moon cast enough light to see by, creating sharp shadows behind every rock and cactus. At step 98, I saw it, a small wooden cross stuck in the ground, weathered and gray. A piece of paper was nailed to it, protected by a plastic sleeve. My hands shook as I took it out. It was a newspaper clipping, dated exactly 1 year in the future. The headline read, "Missing man's body found on Road 60. David Marshall, 34, victim of hit and run." Below the clipping was a handwritten note. I tried to warn myself last time. It didn't work. Maybe this time will be different. The handwriting was mine. My phone buzzed one final time. This message was different. It showed as a draft that had never been sent, dated 1 year ago. They won't stop until they find someone, better the cross than the morgue. Leave this for the next David. Keep driving west. Don't look back. I stood there in the desert darkness, the paper trembling in my hands as the sound of distant engines grew louder from the highway. The headlights appeared again, searching. I ran back to my car, gravel crunching under my feet. The engine started on the first try. I turned the car around and headed west on the dirt road, away from the highway. The radio remained silent, and my phone didn't buzz again. As I drove through the night, I thought about the David who had left that message, the one who had tried to warn himself and failed, the one who had become a headline. I drove until dawn, stopping only when I reached a small town in California. I checked into a motel and slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke up, I wrote down everything that had happened, sealed it in an envelope, and mailed it to myself with instructions to open it in 11 months. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't driven at night since then. I avoid empty highways and desert roads. Sometimes I catch myself checking my phone for messages from my own number, but there haven't been any. Not yet, anyway. The envelope I mailed to myself will arrive in 10 months. I don't know if I'll need it, but I keep thinking about that wooden cross in the desert, about the David who put it there, and the one who didn't make it. I wonder if somewhere out there right now another David is driving down Road 60 in the middle of the night. I wonder if I'll hear the static and his name being whispered through it. I wonder if he'll stop when he shouldn't or keep driving when he should turn. I wonder if he'll understand the warning in time. Yesterday I bought a new car. I made sure it didn't have a radio. I first heard them 3 weeks ago. A soft tinkling sound that woke me at 2:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone, thinking someone was at the door. The sound came again. Distinct metal chimes clinking together somewhere outside my bedroom window. I got up to look, expecting to see the neighbor's wind chimes moving in a night breeze. There were no wind chimes, not in my yard, not in any of the neighboring yards, and there was no wind. The air was dead still, warm and heavy for October in Connecticut. I stood at the window for 5 minutes listening. The sound had stopped. I went back to bed and lay there in the dark, telling myself I'd imagined it or heard something else. Maybe ice cubes settling in the freezer or the house creaking as it cooled. But I knew what I'd heard. Wind chimes. Clear as day. The next night, it happened again. 3:12 a.m. The same delicate metallic tinkling, slightly louder this time. I got up faster, went straight to the window. Nothing moving outside. No wind. No chimes visible anywhere. But the sound continued for almost 10 minutes, while I stood there searching the darkness. My skin got cold, despite the warm night air coming through the screen. During the day, I checked all the yards on our street. Mrs. Henderson, 2 doors down, had wind chimes on her front porch, but they were heavy copper tubes that would make a much deeper sound than what I'd heard. No one else had any. I even walked around the block, looking in backyards where I could see them. Nothing. The third night, the chimes woke me at 1:55 a.m., louder still, close enough that they had to be right outside my window. I switched on my phone's flashlight and shined it out into the yard. The beam caught nothing but my wife's herb garden, the wooden fence and the maple tree with its branches stretching over the lawn. The chimes kept ringing, a high, sharp singing of metal on metal. I went downstairs and out the back door in my boxers and t-shirt. The sound was clearer outside, definitely coming from the direction of the maple tree. I walked toward it, phone lights sweeping back and forth. The chimes grew louder with each step, but when I reached the tree and shined the light up into its branches, there was nothing there, just leaves and empty air. The sound stopped abruptly. Total silence fell. I stood under the tree for 20 minutes waiting, but it didn't start again. I didn't tell my wife Karen about it. She was dealing with enough stress at work, and I didn't want her losing sleep too. But over the next week, the pattern continued. Each night between 1 and 3 a.m., the chimes would wake me. Each night they sounded louder and closer. Each night I searched and found nothing. I started taking sleeping pills, but they didn't help. The chimes cut through the chemical drowsiness like a knife through fog. I installed a security camera pointed at the backyard. The footage showed nothing. No movement, no source for the sound. But you could hear it clearly on the recordings, proving I wasn't imagining things. After 2 weeks, I stopped sleeping entirely. I'd lie in bed beside Karen, waiting for the chimes to start. When they did, I'd get up and search again, even though I knew I wouldn't find anything. During the day, I was a zombie at work, making mistakes, zoning out in meetings. My boss asked if everything was okay at home. I said yes, knowing I sounded unconvincing. The neighbors started giving me weird looks. They'd seen me wandering the yard in the middle of the night, shining flashlights into trees. Mrs. Henderson asked Karen if I was having episodes. Karen started watching me with concern, suggesting I see someone about anxiety or depression. Last night, everything changed. The chimes started at 2:23 a.m., loud enough to rattle the windows. I got up automatically, heading for the back door. Karen stirred but didn't wake. She had gotten used to my nightly wanderings. The sound hit me like a physical force when I stepped outside. Much louder than before, with a sharp, almost angry quality to the metallic ringing. I walked towards the maple tree, no longer needing a light to guide me. The moon was nearly full, casting everything in pale silver. That's when I saw them. Hanging from the lowest branch of the maple tree was a set of wind chimes I'd never seen before. Long silver tubes, at least a dozen of them, suspended from a wooden disc. They were swinging violently despite the complete absence of wind, crashing against each other with enough force to produce the intense ringing that had been haunting my nights. I stopped about 10 feet from the tree, staring. The chimes seemed to swing even harder as I watched, as if responding to my presence. The sound became deafening, drowning out everything else. I could feel the vibrations in my chest. I took a step closer. The moonlight caught the metal tubes, and I saw that they were covered in strange markings, not letters or numbers, but symbols I didn't recognize. They seemed to shift and change as the chimes moved, making my eyes hurt when I tried to focus on them. Another step. The wooden disc at the top started spinning faster and faster, making the tubes whirl in a blur of silver. The sound changed pitch, becoming higher and more piercing. My ears started to ring in harmony with it. I reached out towards the chimes. I don't know why. Some compulsion I couldn't fight. Just before my fingers touched the nearest tube, I noticed something dark dripping from the bottom of the wooden disc. It fell in thick drops, hitting the grass with a hiss. Where it landed, the grass withered and turned black. I yanked my hand back and stumbled away from the tree. The chimes spun faster, their ringing, reaching an impossible pitch. The dark liquid was flowing freely now, running down the tubes and spattering the ground. Smoke rose where it fell, carrying a smell like burning meat. I ran back to the house, slammed the door, and locked it. Through the kitchen window, I could see the chimes still spinning. I could hear their screaming song. The dark liquid had formed a perfect circle on the ground beneath them, and nothing grew in that circle anymore. That was 6 hours ago. The sun is up now. Karen left for work, giving me a worried look when I said I was taking a sick day. I'm sitting at the kitchen table watching the maple tree through the window. The chimes are still there, hanging motionless in the morning light. The grass beneath them is dead, black as ash in a perfect circle. I don't know what to do. I can't leave them there. Whatever that liquid is, it's killing everything it touches, but I'm afraid to go near them again. Afraid of what might happen if I try to take them down. The symbols on the tubes are clearer in daylight. They remind me of something I saw once in an old book in my grandfather's study before he died. He collected occult manuscripts, things he'd find at estate sales and antique shops. Most of it was nonsense, but there was one book, leather-bound, written in a language I didn't recognize that had similar symbols. He caught me looking at it and snatched it away, locking it in his desk drawer. The only time I ever saw him angry. After he died, we couldn't find that book. The desk drawer was empty. I'd forgotten about it until now, seeing those same symbols etched into the silver tubes hanging from my tree. The wind is picking up. The chimes are starting to move. Even in broad daylight, their sound makes my teeth hurt. That dark liquid is beginning to drip again. I didn't check my phone. I just watched the back door at 3:17 a.m. My phone buzzed, but the door remained closed, and the room remained empty. Fighting against every instinct screaming at me to run, I forced myself to check the security feed. The hooded figure was standing right behind my chair, so I spun around. Nothing was there, but on my phone screen I watched as they slowly leaned down, bringing their hidden face close to the back of my head. They reached around me with both hands, making a strangling motion inches from my throat. Then they straightened up and waved at the camera. I drove straight to a hotel and spent hours reviewing the footage. Trying to understand, that's when I noticed something that turned my blood to ice water. The timestamp on the footage wasn't 3:17 a.m. It was 3:17 p.m. In broad daylight, I checked the live feeds in every camera, and the hooded figure stood waiting, waving. Even now, as I write this, they're still there, waiting, waving, always watching. The police say the cameras are working fine. The security company says there's no evidence of tampering. Nobody else can see the figure in the footage, just me. I haven't been back to my house in 3 days. I'm in a motel room 50 miles away. But it doesn't matter, every time I check my phone, every security camera shows the same thing. That hooded figure standing, staring, waving, always at 3:17. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely type. I just checked the cameras again. The figure isn't in my house anymore. They're here, standing in this motel room, waving at my phone's camera. I can see them on the screen right behind me, but when I turn around, nothing. I don't know what to do. I can't keep running. I can't keep watching, but I can't look away either. It's 3:16 p.m. now, almost time for their daily visit. My phone is face down on the bed. I'm not going to check it this time. I'm not going to look at the footage. Maybe if I just ignore it, but we both know I'm going to look. I always look and I'll be there, waving, just like always. Here comes the buzz, 3:17 p.m. I have to check. I have to know. I'm picking up my phone now. Opening the app. The figure is there, of course. Waving. But something's different this time. They're reaching up and pulling back their hood. The thing about driving 18-wheelers is that you're never really alone on the road. Even when you are. At least that's what I used to think before that night on I-80 through Nebraska. Now I know better. Now I know there's a line, and then there's whatever happened to me out there in the dark. I've been driving trucks for 23 years. Started right after high school, following in my old man's footsteps. Made every run you can imagine. Coast to coast, border to border. Dealt with everything from black ice in Montana to hurricanes in Florida. Never had anything shake me up like this though. Never had anything make me question my own eyes and mind like what I saw in that mirror. It was late October, about 2 a.m. I was hauling a load of auto parts from Chicago to Salt Lake City. The schedule was tight, had to make delivery by noon the next day. The road stretched out empty ahead of me. Nothing but darkness, and the occasional reflector post marking the shoulder. My headlights cut through the pitch black, showing just enough asphalt to keep moving forward. The cab of my Peterbilt was warm against the autumn chill outside. I had the radio tuned to some late-night talk show, volume low, just enough to keep me company. The steady hum of the engine and the rhythmic thump of tires on concrete seams had me in that zone. Long-haul drivers know well, alert, but relaxed, focused, but comfortable. I reached for my thermos of coffee, taking a long drink. The bitter liquid was lukewarm now, but I needed the caffeine still. I had about 4 hours to go before I'd hit my mandatory rest period. The dashboard clock's red numbers glowed 2:17 a.m. That's when I saw it, just a quick glance in the rearview mirror, the kind you do automatically every few minutes when you drive for a living. But something wasn't right. There was someone sitting in the sleeper cab behind me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I jerked the wheel slightly, the truck drifting toward the shoulder before I corrected. In that mirror, clear as day, I could see a man. He sat perfectly still, head slightly bowed, wearing what looked like a dark jacket. The dim glow from my instruments provided just enough light to make out his shape. I whipped my head around, twisting in my seat to look behind me. The sleeper cab was empty, completely empty. My sleeping bag was rolled up on the bunk. A few clothes hung from hooks, but no person, no man in a dark jacket. My hands were shaking on the wheel now. Sweat broke out across my forehead, despite the cool air blowing from the vents. I forced myself to look back at the road to keep the truck steady. Count to 10. I told myself, you're tired, your eyes are playing tricks. I waited 30 seconds, then slowly raised my eyes to the rearview mirror again. He was still there, hadn't moved an inch. Same position, same bowed head, same dark jacket. I could see more details now. Graying hair cut short, hands folded in his lap. The image was so clear, so solid. This is happening, I said out loud, my voice sounding strange and tight in the quiet cab. This is not happening. I hit the dome light. Yellow illumination flooded the cabin again. I turned to look behind me. Empty. The sleeper cab was completely empty, but in the mirror, there he sat, unaffected by the lights. I turned on. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear anything else. I pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires as I brought the rig to a stop. The engine idled roughly. I put it in park, hands trembling so bad I could barely work the gear shifts. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood up, moving into the sleeper cab area. Nothing. No one. I touched the bunk where the figure appeared to be sitting in the mirror. The sleeping bag was cool and undisturbed. I checked every corner, moved everything around. Completely empty. Back in the driver's seat, I stared at the mirror. He was still there, hadn't shifted position at all, just sitting waiting. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice cracking. No response, no movement, just that bowed head and folded hands. I covered the mirror with my hand, counted to 20, removed my hand. He remained. The rational part of my brain started working overtime, trying to make sense of it. Maybe there was something wrong with the mirror itself, some trick of the light or reflection. I adjusted it different ways, but the figure stayed consistent, maintained the same position no matter the angle. My phone showed no signal out here in the middle of nowhere. Nebraska. Who would I call anyway? What would I say? I'm seeing a ghost in my mirror, but not in real life. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, engine idling, trying to decide what to do. Couldn't drive like this, constantly distracted by that figure in my mirror. But I couldn't just abandon my truck and cargo either. I had deadlines, responsibilities. Finally, I reached up and turned the mirror away, completely angling it toward the ceiling where I couldn't see anything in it. My hands were still shaking as I put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the interstate. I drove like that for the next 20 minutes, using just my side mirrors, the whole time. My skin crawled with the feeling of being watched every few seconds. I installed a dash cam. The footage showed nothing but empty road. I bought an infrared camera, and the thermal imaging picked up cold spots where the figure stood, but no definite shape. I set up motion-activated trail cameras along the curve. They captured dozens of photos of deer, raccoons, and one confused-looking coyote, but no figure. Last week I decided I'd had enough. I was going to stop talking to it, touch it, whatever it took to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. I left early for my route, parked at the curve at 1:45 a.m., killed the engine, but left the headlights on. The beam cut through a light fog rolling in from the fields. I sat there watching the digital clock on my dashboard tick forward minute by minute, 2:17 a.m. Movement in my side mirror. The figure was there, standing closer than ever before. I could see details I'd missed from the van. The black coat was actually a long dark dress, muddy and torn at the hem. The right arm wasn't just out, it was twisted backward at an impossible angle. The thumb wasn't pointing down the road. It was bent completely backward, pointing at the ditch. I got out slowly, keeping my eyes on the figure. The air temperature dropped 20 degrees in 3 steps. My breath came out in white clouds. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there, face hidden in shadow, arm twisted, thumb pointing. 10 feet away now, close enough to see that the dress wasn't just muddy. It was soaked through dripping water that vanished before it hit the asphalt 8 feet down. The fog thickened, swirling around my legs like cold hands. 6 feet away, the figure's head twitched, a sharp, unnatural movement, like a broken puppet. 4 feet away, I could smell stagnant water and rotting leaves. I stopped, raised my hand, opened my mouth to speak. The figure's head snapped up. Where there should have been a face, there was only black water pouring from an empty hood. The twisted arm shot forward, grabbing my wrist. The touch felt like plunging my arm into a frozen lake. The thumb pressed into my palm, not skin, but something hard and smooth, small metal. I yanked my hand back and ran to the van. Drove 20 miles over the speed limit until I hit the truck stop. Sat in the parking lot until my hand stopped shaking enough to open my palm. There, pressed deep into my flesh, was a small brass key. I recognized the pattern cut into the head. It matched the story about the college student's car, the one they found abandoned, the one they never found the key for. I went back the next night. The figure was there, same spot, same pose. But this time I knew what it wanted. I parked and walked to the edge of the ditch. The fog rolled in right on schedule, the temperature dropped, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I took out the key and held it up. The figure appeared beside me. The black water face turned toward the bottom of the ditch. The twisted arm pointed down. I followed the line of that broken thumb and saw something glinting in the mud. Something metal, something that had been waiting there for 37 years. I climbed down. The mud sucked at my boots, but I kept going. Near the bottom, half buried in decades of silt, was a car. Most of it had rusted away, but I could still make out the shape of a 1980s Honda Civic. The key slid into the trunk lock like it had been waiting all this time inside, wrapped in plastic. It was a stack of letters, love letters, dozens of them, all addressed to the missing student, all from her married professor, all describing how he would make it look like an accident, how he would watch her car go off the road, how no one would ever know. But someone did know. Someone had been waiting all these years for someone to stop, to listen, to look. I called the police. They found more than letters in that trunk. They found evidence. They found answers. They found closure for a family that had been waiting 37 years to know the truth. I still drive that route every night, past Miller's Curve, past the ditch where they pulled out the car, past the spot where the figure used to stand. The figure is gone now. The arm that pointed the way, the thumb that guided me down, the face of black water that had waited so patiently for someone to see. But sometimes when the fog rolls in and the temperature drops, I catch something in my rearview mirror, a shape by the side of the road, an arm raised, not in a plea for help, but in farewell, in thanks. I don't stop anymore. I don't need to. The figure found what it was looking for, the truth buried in the mud, the key to unlock it, and someone willing to stop and listen. Now when I drive past Miller's Curve between 2 and 3 a.m., I see only empty road ahead. The quiet feels different here. Not heavy like the silence in my empty house, not natural like the quiet of the night shift. It feels peaceful, like a long wait finally ended, like a story finally told. I still keep the key, not because I need it anymore. The police took the letters and everything else as evidence. I keep it as a reminder that sometimes the things we think we're seeing aren't what they appear to be at all. Sometimes what looks like a body in a ditch is really a signal, looks like a hitchhiker is really a witness. What looks like a ghost story is really about justice. The professor goes to trial next month. They found more evidence in his house, more letters, more victims, more secrets he thought would stay buried in the mud and water of Miller's Curve. I gave my statement to the police, told them everything except the part about the figure, the black water face, and the twisted arm about the cold touch, and the key pressed into my palm. Some things you can't explain to people who haven't driven that road at night, who haven't seen what waits in the fog between 2 and 3 a.m. Sarah called last week, said she heard about me on the news. The delivery driver who cracked a cold case, who brought a killer to justice, who gave a family answers after 37 years. She said Tommy asked about me, said maybe they could come visit sometime. I told her I'd like that, told her I had some stories to tell them. Not about ghosts or figures in the fog. Real stories about waiting, about watching, about stopping to help someone who needs you, even if you don't understand why at first. I still drive the night shift, still make my deliveries, still pass Miller's Curve between 2 and 3 a.m. But now I watch the empty road ahead. Instead of the rearview mirror, whatever waited there for 37 years has moved on, found peace, found justice. Sometimes other drivers ask me about the curve, the stories, the figure they swear they've seen stand